Alright, you and I are diving into a wild story. Massive dark power is ending the world. The hero is apologizing for being weak, claiming Chris. Our main character should have been the hero instead. The heroine begged Evan to stop, reminding the squad they did their absolute best. Even though she was super frustrated, she noted that if Chris, the absolute genius, had picked up a sword a little sooner, he would have totally smashed the star level and become a 10-star hero. If that actually happened, Chris and Evan might have actually stopped the apocalypse. They called him the Great Extra. The guy had insane talent, letting him master anything instantly and leave behind a completely legendary track record. This Great Extra's journey kicked off at age 20, when Chris ran away from his cursed clan, dreaming of making it big. While hustling in the back alleys, he spotted a quest about an invasion by the Carnage Demon King. Labeled as an Era of Destruction mission, it was recruiting a party for the hero. Knowing this was a once-in-a-lifetime shot, he signed up. He swore to achieve epic greatness so he could enjoy endless wealth and honor after the war. Too bad they totally failed. The Domain of Light ultimately fell right into the Carnage Demon King's hands. Hearing Evan wish he could rewind time to be chosen as hero again, Chris thought nope. Even if he could go back, he wasn't doing this again. One lifetime of pure suffering was plenty. Dreaming about it was pointless, especially with the whole world literally collapsing right now. The dark magic was almost complete, clearly about to blow up in their faces. Chris realized this was truly the absolute end. His final wish. If a next life existed, he wanted to be born super rich. He closed his eyes, accepting humanity's fate. But wait, he opens them and realizes he traveled back in time. Now he is literally a young master in the Magic Empire. Chris woke up in the Dark Magic Clan, one of 12 groups backing the Magic Empire. From what he gathered, he had rewinded 15 years into the past, landing 5 years before the Era of Destruction started. Now watch this closely. He thought he had seen everything but demon beasts doing yard work. Totally didn't expect that. Plus, he found out whose body he hijacked. Christian Count Cassar. He recalled a friend confirming Christian was a demon from a secondary branch family. She explained that the house of Count Cassar was a branch under the barons of the massive dark magic clan. Chris asked if they were weak. Nope, she said, even as a side family. They held serious power in the dark magic clan. Plus, they were so insanely rich, every single demon in the Magic Empire definitely knew their name. His friend added they had 2 potential heirs, but the oldest son, Christian, total trash. An absolute troublemaker through and through. Count Cassar basically gave up on him entirely, but that was old news. Chris asked why it was old news. Did he fix his life? Nope. His friend casually dropped that Christian's own relatives murdered him. Remembering this gave Chris a cold sweat. He punched the mirror in pure frustration. I know what you're thinking. A rich kid, jackpot, yeah right, he just wanted a normal rich life but got this mess. Why here? Why Christian? Since this absolute loser was doomed to die, Chris racked his brain trying to figure out a survival plan. He realized he woke up in this body, with a name crazy similar to his, just 3 days ago. And Christian dies in 2 years. The fact that Christian got wiped out inside Count Cassar's house, a family totally obsessed with honor, probably meant Christian was completely useless, so Chris figured if he just stayed quiet and behaved, he could dodge that deadly fate. Since he woke up filthy rich, he should just chill and enjoy the high life. But then he smacked his forehead, realizing that easy lifestyle was completely off the table. Ragnarok, the end of the world. The Carnage Demon King started the war just to sacrifice all of humanity to complete it. By the time they realized, it was way too late. Both the Domain of Light and Magic Empire were totally doomed. This meant surviving required stopping the apocalypse itself. He knew the Carnage Demon King kicked off the war. But the bigger issue was the countless demons in the Magic Empire loyal to him. To stop this, Chris needed to be way stronger than the Carnage Demon King. He only had one option. Become the Demon Emperor and conquer the Magic Empire. With 5 years left before the Era of Destruction hits, he decided to go all in. If he succeeds, that mansion and the entire Magic Empire become his. Suddenly, Count Cassar slammed the table in pure rage. He yelled, didn't he order him to stay in his room? He demanded to know. Had he zero shame showing his face after causing that recent incident? He swore one more mistake, and he would personally chop his head off. Chris stayed dead silent, realizing Count Cassar had an absolutely terrifying and intimidating aura. But you're gonna want to see what happens next. Count Cassar was stunned when Chris calmly apologized for all his past mistakes. All right, stick with me. You and I are watching our guy completely destroy his old trash reputation to push his new plan forward. Count Cassar demanded to know what he just said. Chris fired back with a seemingly genuine apology, swearing up and down that his past mistakes would never happen again. But the Count wasn't buying it. He asked if Chris really expected him to believe that garbage right after his latest massive screw-up, thinking he was just being mocked. Chris just looked away, trying to remember what exactly the old Christian did right before this regression timeline. The guy had so many crazy scandals, he honestly couldn't even pick one. Still, he had to admit one thing. The Count totally losing faith in him. Yeah, that was definitely his own fault. He played the amnesia card, explaining he lost some memories 3 days ago. He claimed that trying to get them back made him reflect on his toxic past and realize how badly he messed up. He dropped another completely heartfelt apology. The Count, though, stone cold. He refused to budge, reminding Chris that he had heard these exact same empty excuses a million times before. Chris totally agreed that talk is cheap. He looked right at him and promised the Count he would finally prove his worth through raw actions from now on. Then, he straight up begged to be locked inside the infamous punishment cave. He swore to survive in there for a whole month, determined to show off a brand new side. This cave was a brutal prison meant for high-ranking demons. Pitch black, zero light. All 5 of your human senses completely shut down. Just a few days in that nightmare is enough to permanently break a normal person's mind. But for Chris right now, absolute perfection. He desperately needed a completely isolated spot to dodge everyone's annoying stares while he worked on his power. Now pay attention here, things are getting real. The Count asked if he seriously wanted a whole month in there, loudly doubting he would even last 12 hours. But Chris just smiled with pure confidence. He fired back that he knew exactly how brutal that place really was. Even so, he believed it was the bare minimum to earn back the Count's trust. The Count just stared at him in dead silence for a long moment. Then he asked if Chris realized how many times they had this exact same conversation, only for it to end in total disappointment. That actually left Chris speechless. Luckily, Count Cassar finally caved. He agreed to give him one single final chance to try, but dropped a massive warning. If nothing changed after 30 days, he would be permanently kicked out. Chris clenched his fist hard. He knew expulsion meant an instant death sentence. A ton of dangerous people were lining up to end Christian's life the second he lost his family's protection. Still, he nodded. Then he boldly asked the Count for one special favor if he actually proved he changed. This absolutely enraged the Count on the spot. He snapped that Chris was being wildly arrogant, acting like he would definitely survive this unharmed. But he still agreed. If Chris proved his worth, he would grant any wish. Then the Count turned his back and walked away with one freezing cold reality check. He made it super clear he didn't actually expect this miracle to ever happen. Cut to later. Chris was chilling in his room staring at something on his desk. Suddenly Cox, the Cassar family butler and literal half-vampire, stepped in to announce the punishment cave was completely ready. Chris put the object down and nodded. He followed Cox right down the hallway while the estate servants instantly started whispering to each other about how the family trash actually volunteered for the punishment cave. They immediately started betting on what kind of scam he was pulling now. Chris overheard them bring up his recent screw-up, insulting the young lady from the Poison Magic clan. That mess got so bad Count Cassar had to apologize in person. You saw that too, right? They gossiped about the humiliation of begging a rival clan, wondering when this famous loser would actually grow up and change. Some even started taking bets on how long he'd last inside that nightmare cave. Hearing the absolute highest bet was only a pathetic 2 days. He just smirked to himself and kept walking quietly. He had zero idea someone was closely watching him. They finally reached the massive punishment cave. 2 absolutely giant Death Knights were standing guard right at the entrance. Chris stared them down, thinking Death Knights made perfect security guards for the Magic Empire. He confidently strolled right up to the dark cave entrance, not caring about the guards at all, as long as they kept everybody else out of his business. Suddenly, someone yelled, "Big brother." He spun around confused and spotted a familiar face. Then it clicked. It was Christian's biological brother, the golden child, Tur Baron Kassar. Tur suddenly whipped out his sword and pointed it right at him. This completely caught Chris off guard. But he stayed perfectly calm, just staring dead into his eyes. That cold look terrified Tur, though he tried hiding it. Very calmly. Chris asked what he actually wanted, since this definitely didn't look like a sweet goodbye. Tur fired back that Chris was a total embarrassment to the family, and even though he didn't know what crazy scam he was planning now. He warned him straight up, ruin the family honor again and I'll personally kill you. Tur then asked if he got the message, calling it his absolute final warning. That exact moment, Chris realized it was probably Tur who murdered the original Christian. He suddenly remembered meeting Tur back in the era of destruction. Back then, Tur was a famous demon known for his crazy magic skills. Chris just sighed. Sure, Tur was a cute, hardworking kid once, but right now, he was just an arrogant brat trying to threaten a literal legend. A legend who survived the pure nightmare of the era of destruction. Chris casually swatted Tur's sword completely out of the way and told him to move. Tur was totally shocked by this zero-fear reaction, asking what he just said. But Chris simply replied that message received, now get the hell out of here. Tur kept insisting he was dead serious. But trust me, you're going to love this. Chris just turned his back and walked right into the punishment cave, leaving Tur completely speechless. He just stood there stammering, yelling out to ask what the heck that crazy new attitude meant. Deep inside the punishment cave, Chris walked further in, realizing he could no longer see or hear a single thing. Stick with me here. We are about to see why keeping just a faint sensation in his fingers was completely intentional for the prisoner's items. Otherwise, they would just starve to death. A normal person would completely lose their mind in a dark place like this. But then again, that didn't matter to him at all. He had survived way worse during his treasure hunter days, and losing his 5 senses was actually exactly what he needed. It forced him to look deeper inside himself. Without his senses, Chris couldn't rebuild his currently trashed physical body. It would take insane time and luck. But with the crazy medical skills he suffered to master as the divine doctor, combined with the bone compression art he tweaked from circus body modification techniques and various magic stones, a full recovery was looking good. It was totally possible. He grabbed a magic stone with his fingers, thinking he never could have afforded these back in the day. But I guess that is just one awesome perk of being in an elite clan. They actually honored his requests. Even though everyone called him a useless loser, it reminded him how he and Evan used to fight over rare magic stones. He pulled out the magic stones, knowing he absolutely had to start with the white one to purify his toxins. A super boring process, but totally essential. Watch closely. We need to see him meticulously clean out those nasty toxins using white mana. However, the tiniest mistake would cause burning pain everywhere. He started purging the bad stuff, and in seconds, 100% purified, he completed the whole process without a single scratch. Absolute piece of cake. Meanwhile, back over in the Count's fancy office, Count Kassar asked Cox how Chris was doing. Cox replied that Chris went into the punishment cave obediently, but worried he might break so badly, he couldn't even scream for help. That made Count Kassar wonder if sending him to the punishment cave was a huge mistake. He sat there and remembered how promising Chris was as a kid, having no clue what caused his sudden downfall. Did his natural crazy talent just make him way too arrogant? Whatever the reason, Count Kassar thought he would rather see Chris completely ruined, or even dead, than living such a pathetic, miserable life. But then he remembered Chris's confident promise to prove himself through his actions. The Count Kassar shook his head, reminding himself not to get his hopes up at all. Chris had fooled them way too many times before. Then he asked Cox if anything was weird when Chris entered the cave. Cox froze, totally hesitating to answer the question, which absolutely infuriated Count Kassar, who ordered him to spill every single detail without hiding anything. Cox admitted Chris took magic stones inside, including a dream stone, an item causing intense hallucinations. He warned Count Kassar that since they didn't know the wild side effects, they should open the cave immediately and pull Chris out. But Count Kassar clenched his fist tight. No, if that is the case, he said, we should just let Chris die. 1 month later, Count Kassar stood right outside, assuming Chris was completely destroyed by now. But then, suddenly, the cave door opened from inside. I know what you were thinking. Dead right, but the Count was shocked to see Chris totally fine. Chris walked out, cheerfully telling Count Khazar that he had finally arrived and was waiting for him. Stepping entirely out of the cave, he stopped right in front of him, asking if he was surprised, reminding Count Khazar of his promise to return a changed man. Tears literally filled Count Khazar's eyes seeing that old, fierce confidence in Chris's gaze, an expression he hadn't seen since Chris was just a little kid. Count Khazar finally admitted that Chris successfully endured the brutal punishment. Chris just laughed out loud, asking him if that was supposed to be a compliment. But the Count quickly told him not to get a big head over something so minor, reminding him they still didn't trust him at all. Chris sighed back, saying that just meant he'd have to try even harder, silently thinking to himself that Count Khazar was just a stubborn, rigid old man. He figured the Count thought he barely survived the cave, but nope. Chris was so insanely busy training the whole time, he didn't have a single second to get bored. First, he totally optimized his body to master swordsmanship. Thanks to that white mana stone, every single cell in his body was just bursting with crazy life. Plus that dream stone, it flipped the script completely. Cox tried his best to stop him from taking that narcotic mana stone, but Chris was glad he stayed stubborn. The wild hallucinations drastically cut down his required metamorphosis time. On top of that, Chris formed 2 cores, one of them being a 1-star spell, Light. He proudly thought to himself, I am a freaking genius. Obviously, Chris used his new darkness core to completely hide his light core, knowing the demons would lose their absolute minds if they ever found out. If things just ended right there, it would have been awesome. But then a magic stone floated near him. Seeing the dream stone, he smirked with pure sarcasm, thinking it was a massive mistake for them to hand this over. Someone probably hoped he would get high on it and totally ruin himself. But Chris accepted that challenge, planning to use it as a stepping stone for his huge leap forward. Then he told Count Khazar he wanted to make a request since he actually kept his big promise. So Count Khazar ordered him to speak up. Chris straight up asked for permission to use the Black Swamp Knight's training ground. However, Count Khazar firmly replied that a useless loser like him had no place there. He quickly reminded Chris they were one of 3 major orders of knights supporting the Dark Magic clan. Only the most ultra-elite knights could show off their skills in that space. Chris calmly explained he wasn't asking to join the order. So where does that leave us? He just wanted to borrow the field, claiming their bravery would be a positive influence. Absolute classic. All right, stick with me. We are kicking things off with Count Khazar actually agreeing, but warning our boy not to embarrass himself with the knights. Chris nodded like it was nothing, but just as the Count turned to leave, Chris stopped him cold. He had one more massive favor to ask. Cut to the very next day, right out at the Black Swamp Knight's training grounds. The squad was hanging out when they spotted Chris walking up. Cue the intense whispering. Was that really the useless young master? What was he doing here? Hearing that chatter, Chris realized they were just straight up trashing the Count's son to his face. He knew exactly why. In this magic empire, raw power mattered way more than fancy titles. But honestly, Chris had a totally different reason for showing up. If he could score a recommendation letter from Vice Commander Melon, Count Khazar would hand over the library key. That library was his secret second request. Why? Because it held every single dark magic grimoire the Khazar family owned. Learning dark magic and cracking that vault was absolutely necessary. Just yesterday, he had asked Count Khazar why there were strings attached. After all, Chris was still technically part of the main family. The Count. He politely reminded Chris how he previously tried to sell an advanced grimoire on the black market for cheap. Chris was absolutely speechless, wondering what kind of mess this body's previous owner had lived. Yeah, original Christian was a total deadbeat loser. Back in the present, Chris confidently strolled right through the middle of the training camp. He knew his top priority was getting the vice commander to respect him, but suddenly, some massive shadows completely blocked his path. Looking up, he saw a whole squad of knights standing in his way, and right in the middle, Tur. Now pay close attention here. Tur barked that bugs like him couldn't just casually stroll in. Annoyed at seeing Tur again, Chris just smirked, a wild idea brewing. He figured this was a perfect opportunity. Tur stepped up, warning him to turn back. He mocked Chris, saying he probably didn't want to throw away the pathetic life he barely saved in the punishment cave. Chris just let out a tired sigh. He asked Tor if he was really gonna talk big like that, especially since their father personally cleared him to enter the grounds. Tor's jaw dropped. He absolutely could not believe it. Suddenly, a voice from behind interrupted, saying they respected the Count's orders, but Chris himself was completely untrustworthy. Chris turned around and boom, it was Vice Commander Melon. He instantly noticed she was flexing a dark aura, sitting right at a solid 4 stars of power. He figured she was just trying to scare him off early, but joke's on her, he was totally used to this. He gave Melon a super respectful greeting, catching her completely off guard. She couldn't believe he brushed off her dark energy. Chris then announced that since the Vice Commander was stepping in, there was no backing down. He was going to prove he totally belonged on this training ground. Melon asked how exactly he planned to do that. Pick a fight with one of the demons here. She warned him to drop the joke before things got ugly. Chris just smiled calmly. He wasn't joking at all. He requested one tiny rule: absolutely no dark energy allowed. He knew his old body's wild party boy lifestyle meant his current dark energy levels were practically non-existent compared to what they should be. So a pure hand-to-hand brawl was his only option. Melon hesitated. Even in a duel, letting the family heir get totally trashed would be a massive headache. She asked if he seriously thought he could win a fistfight. Chris basically said let's find out, and casually told her to go ahead and pick his opponent. With a slick finger snap, he pointed at Tor. He told Melon that Tor was actually the perfect warm-up. Tor absolutely lost his mind, screaming about the disrespect. Melon stepped in, telling Chris he should probably pick someone a little more his own speed. She asked if he even realized Tor was a 2-star demon. That is a rank literally no 13-year-old kid could ever hit without insane, once-in-a-generation talent. You and I know the math. 13 or 23, a normal guy wouldn't even scratch the surface of that crazy power. But Chris wasn't your average deadbeat anymore, and he knew it. He just shook his head, flashing a confident grin at everyone. He said if he was going to prove himself anyway, swinging at the biggest guy in the room made the most sense. Crushing Tor was simply the best move. Then looking right at Tor with a mocking smirk, he asked if little bro was scared of his big brother. That pushed Tor over the edge. Duel accepted. Seconds later, the knights formed a circle around them, screaming for Tor to absolutely obliterate Chris right then. They yelled that if Tor let Chris walk away in one piece, the whole squad would suffer extra training. Chris completely ignored the toxic peanut gallery. He casually turned to Melon to ask about the win conditions. Was it just a tap-out situation until someone surrendered? Melon sneered. She thought he was crazy arrogant for not knowing his place, secretly hoping Tor would knock him out cold and maybe snap a leg or two. She smirked, saying surrendering was way too boring. They were fighting until one of them was completely incapacitated. Chris faked a gasp, playfully asking Tor if he heard the rules. What was he going to do now that everyone expected an absolute beatdown? Tor was seeing red. He called Chris an arrogant punk and swore to shut him up forever. But bam! Chris suddenly stepped in, landing a lightning-fast right hook straight to the jaw. Chris laughed, asking what his problem was, calmly reminding him the fight had officially started. Furious, Tor threw a wild counter-punch, but Chris dodged it like a ghost. Honestly, Chris knew this fight was basically cheating. Sure, his current body hadn't even hit 1 star, meaning he shouldn't stand a chance against dark energy. But in a pure fistfight, the old Chris was a seasoned veteran who had survived countless brutal battlefields in his past life. So what do you and I take away from this? With his light domain stats and punishment cave grind, Chris was secretly packing 3-star power. These knights are so cooked. Let's dive right into this wild showdown. The crowd was absolutely speechless, stuttering over what they just witnessed. Tor clutched his stomach in pure agony, coughing up blood. Chris smirked, teasingly asking if he was crying and needed a kiss on his boo-boo. Obviously, that just made Tor see absolute red. Tor yelled, demanding to know what cheap trick Chris used. Seeing his bully wrecked felt amazing, but Chris stayed ice cold, claiming he didn't use any tricks. He just asked if Tor was maybe a little too weak. That comment pushed him over the edge, completely unleashing his dark energy. He was raging mad. Chris totally ignored the explosive aura, playfully cupping his ear and asking him to repeat himself. Claiming he couldn't hear him since he mumbled, Tor snapped, throwing his arm back and charging at lightning speed, screaming murder. Chris narrowly dodged the heavy strike, mocking his slow speed. Tor completely lost it and unleashed a wild barrage of punches. But Chris easily dodged every single one. He blocked Tor's arm and instantly scattered his dark energy, leaving him completely stunned. Before he could blink, Chris landed a clean punch to the jaw, knocking him out cold. He knew fighting was pure instinct. Tor hit the dirt unconscious while the knights stood there with their jaws on the floor, absolutely shocked. Chris casually strolled up to him. Meanwhile, the knights started whispering, wondering if Tor just got cocky and pulled his punches so he wouldn't hurt him too badly. Now watch closely, because for Melon and the guys, it made zero sense unless Tor threw the match. Chris turned around, looked right at Melon, and casually asked if that little show was enough to prove he was qualified. She kept her cool and just said yes. He thanked her for the respect, but inside, he was hyped that his crazy plan actually worked. On the outside, he stayed chill, silently vowing to master absolutely everything, swordsmanship and magic alike. A few days later, back in his room, he unleashed his dark aura, realizing he finally hit the 1-star rank. Still, he grumbled that leveling up took way longer than expected, since he wasn't fully used to handling dark energy yet. Plus he had to deal with all the messy residue left behind by Christian. The bell rang. He realized he needed to grind even higher to wield light magic at the same time. Suddenly, a spooky ghost maid appeared. It was Marie, Christian's maid. He couldn't believe they were actually using a high-level evil spirit just to do basic household chores. But considering the old Christian was a total menace, it made sense why no normal human could actually survive working for him. He quietly promised to replace her later and ordered some juice before hitting the gym. But then, she deadpan asked if he wanted fresh human blood. Yeah, no thanks. He ordered strawberry instead. But the ghost maid totally ignored him, creeping closer and insisting that blood juice was super delicious. Startled, he firmly insisted on strawberry. Despite that, she stubbornly tried to suggest the blood juice all over again. Pushing him to his absolute limit, he finally yelled to just bring the strawberry juice. A moment later, while sipping his totally normal strawberry drink, Cox walked in asking about training. Even though it was super early, Cox acted all worried that Chris was working way too hard. Then he quickly changed his tune, saying he was actually super proud of his hustle. He even claimed he believed in Chris when everyone else was hating. You and I both know something's fishy here. Chris glared, unleashed a massive dark aura, and angrily asked who gave him the right to judge. He flat out told Cox he never asked for his fake belief. Startled, Cox bowed super low, apologizing for crossing the line. He awkwardly wished him a good workout before quickly rushing out of the room. Chris knew in his gut that Cox was shady. Soon after hitting the training grounds, he noticed the knights were giving him way more respect now. Dropping his bag, he wondered if he could finally start winning them over little by little now. He started his sword practice. A knight quietly watched him for a second before sneaking off toward a nearby tent, the vice commander's break room. The knight slipped into Melon's office, reporting that Chris was back out on the training field again. Melon wondered what the heck he was plotting. She vividly remembered how genuinely impressive Tor's movements were during that entire fight. Yet she still couldn't believe Chris perfectly canceled out his dark magic like it was nothing. She started wondering if Chris actually possessed insane battle vision. If that was true, then maybe this guy actually had the raw talent to surpass Lord Echitaran, the main family's golden boy. But then she quickly snapped back to harsh reality, reminding herself that Chris was just trash who blew all his dark energy partying and living a totally reckless lifestyle. In her mind, closing that gap now was impossible. Suddenly, a huge crash echoed outside, making her sprint out of the tent. Demanding answers, a knight explained that Chris apparently just had a tiny conflict with a squire. Everyone was absolutely floored to see Cannon, a legit 1-star demon, smashed face-first into the dirt. That insane reveal sparked wild rumors that Chris might have actually hit 1-star himself, leaving Melon totally stunned. Meanwhile, Chris, standing tall and cocky, announced he wanted to see the Black Swamp Knight's legendary skills, but so far, they were completely failing to live up to the hype. He called them cowards, absolutely enraging the knights. And trust me, you and I are gonna want to see what happens next. Because right then, a massive absolute tank of a knight stepped up, introducing himself as Torin. Alright, you and I are about to watch our guy flip the script. Chris smiles, realizing they walked right into his trap. Torin charges forward with a wooden sword. Chris knew these elites would never willingly teach their secret night techniques to a quote-unquote worthless trash. So what does he do? He decides to just steal them. He easily blocks Torin and counters, his eyes completely locked on the enemy's grip, angle, and that super smooth footwork. He adjusts his own grip on the wooden blade, instantly recognizing the legendary mud fencing style he had only ever heard rumors about. He figures even a rough copy should get the job done. Mirroring the exact grip and footwork, he furiously swings his wooden sword straight at Torin's face. That heavy strike absolutely shocks Melon. Chris just smirks with pure pride, knowing he literally executed it perfectly. Fast forward minutes later. Torin is straight up defeated on the dirt, with Chris casually sitting on him. All the surrounding knights totally panic seeing how insanely strong this kid actually is. They start freaking out, wondering if his dark core was actually destroyed, and how he somehow reached the 1-star level during this chaos. Melon stands completely paralyzed, realizing her instincts were dead on. Chris slowly looks around the yard and coldly drops that this whole display was super disappointing. He adds that maybe he gave these knights way too much credit. If their skills are this pathetic, maybe the vice commander should take some actual responsibility. Hearing that massive disrespect, the knights totally panic. They wonder if they should jump in, thinking he's completely insane for provoking Melon. Meanwhile, Melon is barely containing her rage. She snaps back that while she gets his hype over a lucky win, he is getting way too cocky. Chris stands up tall and boldly challenges her right back. Now pay close attention, because here is where the tension skyrockets. He tells her to show him real Black Swamp Knight skills. Melon snatches a nearby knight's blade. She unleashes a massively powerful slash right at him. The sheer furious force deeply cracks the solid ground. She calls him a despicable brat, warning she could end his life in literally 1 second, but he calmly asks if she plans to fight. Using her full strength against a rookie, he boldly proposes limiting her dark energy to just 1 star and totally banning the use of dark magic. He even suggests they strictly use wooden swords. She grabs a wooden blade, pointing it straight at his chest. She straight up tells him she'll break both his legs using only half a star's power. He stays totally cool, betting his legs on the line, and asks, "And you?" She barks back that nothing else matters because he isn't walking out of here today. With pure killing intent, she lunges forward, swinging her sword with insane heavy force. Luckily, he manages to block it, but she is way stronger, leaving him struggling to stand firm. She brutally bombards him with fierce attacks, yet he blocks every single hit. The watching knights are mind-blown he is surviving against the vice commander. They guess he's only lasting because Melon usually wields a massive greatsword, not this wooden toy. Melon, on the flip side, totally knows it isn't the weapon holding her back. For some crazy reason, her attacks just aren't reaching him. She reminds herself he's a complete weakling who shouldn't stand a chance. But doubt creeps in. Is what's happening right now secretly identical to when he magically survived against Tor? Or maybe even before that. Seeing her totally confused, Chris flashes a cocky grin. He teases that things aren't exactly going her way, which just absolutely infuriates her even more. She screams at him to shut his mouth. Gripping her sword tighter, she rapidly gathers dark energy into the blade and launches a devastating slash that straight up shatters the ground. Chris immediately dives to the side, successfully dodging the lethal blow, then moving at blinding speed. I know what you're thinking, an epic sword combo. Nope. He charges and brutally headbutts her right in the face. She instinctively grabs her nose, totally shocked to see real blood. Chris is super hyped his wild plan actually worked. Melon relies on magic. And with her dark magic heavily restricted, one single slip in defense means she can't easily recover using pure physical strength alone. Or at least that's what our boy figured. He knew if Melon was a pure physical sword demon, this absolutely would have failed. Melon bursts into loud laughter, openly admitting she never expected a literal headbutt. She confesses she underestimated him big time, promising to get totally serious now. But Chris just points at her neck, smoothly asking if the fight isn't already over. She looks down, noticing a very slight scratch there. He smirks, explaining he nicked her with his fingernail during that headbutt. He casually asks, what if that nail was soaked in deadly poison? Humbly accepting her absolute defeat. She tells him to name his prize, but demands a chance to fight him again later. He replies that if she really wants a tiebreaker match. She'll have to accept a second massive condition, which she agrees to. Stepping super close, he whispers, asking if she's willing to kneel before him. Totally stunned, she whispers back that this is straight up impossible. Her absolute loyalty belongs to the Dark Magic clan's main family, the Baron House. He casually whispers back that he already knows, she's just visiting on an excursion from the main family, but then smoothly asks, wouldn't that little loyalty problem be fixed if he actually became the young lord of the entire clan? Shocked, she asks what the heck he means. Calling it pure nonsense, she reminds him that the 5 elite young lords with officially recognized succession rights are all literal direct descendants from the main family, but he confidently fires back that no rule says a branch family member can't claim that young lord title. Plus. Anyway, he accepts her double request. He then asks Melon for a proper rematch in exactly 1 month, dropping that he honestly needs some time to train up. He adds that next time, they'll set super clear power limits. She immediately warns him that if so, he'd have absolutely zero chance of beating her. But what do you and I take from this? He smirks, saying nothing is truly impossible, leaving her completely speechless. All right, stick with me here. He drops an elegant bow, telling her they will meet in exactly a month. But inside, he is swearing to show Melon where her absolute loyalty actually belongs. Later on, he hands Melon's recommendation letter straight to Count Khazar, reporting that the demon's basic foundation is seriously lacking. Because of that, they need to crank up the training. Count Khazar silently reviews the letter, remembering Melon's previous report. The one mentioning that Chris is a straight-up genius, despite his super low star rank. He easily crushed others who had solid foundations, and even she got totally beaten. The Count asks Melon point-blank to confirm if she actually lost to him. She completely owns up to it, calling it a weird fight that she actually enjoyed. Khazar just stares at Chris, thinking to himself that maybe this kid finally changed for real. Chris feels super awkward under the Count's intense glare, and asks if he has something stuck on his face. Count Khazar simply replies with nothing. Then, just like he promised, he hands over the precious library key. Snagging the key, Chris walks out and proudly holds it high, totally hyping himself up. It is not just about scoring library access. He also managed to completely flip Melon's mindset. He knows exactly who Melon is, a main family demon from the Dark Magic clan, who actually operated as a crazy strong 6-star demon back during the era of destruction. If he wants to take total control of the entire Dark Magic clan, making Melon his loyal pawn is step 1. Chris fully understands he has not totally won Melon over yet, but he is confident a month is plenty of time. His arrogant self firmly believes he is an absolute genius. Walking out of the office, he wonders if Count Khazar's expression was actually a look of pure fatherly pride. Maybe demons actually have family attachments too. Just maybe, Count Khazar will turn out to be a way better dad than the one Chris had in his past life. Stepping into the massive library, he vows to his new dad that he will not let him down. He is instantly blown away by the insane collection inside. They have books covering blood magic, intense summoning studies, hardcore curse techniques, and way more. Now pay close attention here, because things get totally unpredictable. He pulls a forbidden book off the shelf, but suddenly Marie pops up out of nowhere right behind him. It completely spooks him. He trips and yells, demanding to know why she is there. Laughing it off, she asks why else. She explains she used to be the librarian here, leaving him even more confused. Then Marie teasingly asks if he is still the same old fool, which totally disgusts him. He instantly tells her to shut up, but she keeps poking at him, saying his brother is way better. That makes him absolutely furious, yelling at her again while she just laughs. Marie then notices the grimoire he grabbed holds a 4-star dark magic spell called Binding Seal. She bluntly tells him that right now, he has zero chance of understanding it. He arrogantly snaps the book shut, brushing her off and claiming it is fine because he is a total genius. Marie is left speechless for a couple of seconds. Then she acts super proud, declaring that he is not just a genius, but pretty handsome too. That just seriously irritates him, so he tells her to stop forcing it. Then she asks if there is a specific reason he picked out that exact book. He replies yes, simply because he needs to go catch a rat. The very next day, he hits the training field, doing the morning run right alongside all the other knights. While jogging, his brain is working overtime on who the rat could be. Suspect number 1 is Tor, since nobody in the house hates him more for being useless. Suspect number 2 is Cox. Even though Cox is not clan blood, he has free access to the punishment cave. Chris knows perfectly well that for demons, raw power matters way more than social status. Yet Cox is constantly clinging to him, showering him with fake flattery. He even suspects there might be a sneaky third party he does not know about yet. But anyway. Okay, let's pause. We all know whoever set him up desperately wants him ruined, right? Especially after sneaking that dream stone into the punishment cave. He stops running and wonders if he should just act like the absolute scumbag they expect. He figures whoever looks the happiest about his bad behavior is definitely the guilty one. So he loudly curses, screaming that this is way too hard. Then he walks off, sarcastically telling the knights to enjoy their little run. The other knights just stand there totally confused, wondering what happened. Later on at the dinner table, he violently smashes a plate of food on the floor. This makes Count Khazar stand up furious, screaming his name. Chris just casually replies that the servant should have brought him proper food from the start. Then he screams at the staff, demanding they remake his whole meal. Count Khazar glares at him with pure rage, calling himself a fool for actually thinking Chris had finally matured. Looking incredibly disappointed, he leaves the table. Chris feels a tiny bit bad, but quickly reminds himself that this crazy act is for the family's own good. He really hopes Count Khazar will eventually understand. Over the next few days, Chris makes sure everyone starts calling him the ultimate demon. He grinds hard to spread rumors that he is back to being total trash, mocking the maids, burning through cash like it is water, and basically tormenting everyone in sight. One day, Marie pours juice right into his wine glass, completely enraging him. He yells, demanding to know why she will not let him drink real wine. Laughing, she tells him he is drinking wine, it just has zero alcohol. That makes him even more furious, screaming that she literally stole his alcohol. Marie calmly explains that he is literally a minor and should not even be drinking in the first place. He asks why that even matters if he is already a useless scumbag. She then asks if he really decided to become a complete scumbag again, sweetly adding that no matter what, she will always stay right by his side. That completely grosses him out. He instantly unleashes a dark spell, reminding her he already said he is busy hunting a rat. And trust me, you are not gonna want to miss this. Marie is totally shocked by the dark magic, asking if he already mastered the binding seal. He proudly replies yes. He bragged that he was an absolute genius, tweaking it to work even at a lower star level. He hadn't just been goofing off. Stick with me here, he had actually been grinding hard, mastering multiple spells. But suddenly, Tour burst right in. He slammed the door open, just as Mary asked if Chris was truly a genius. Instantly, Chris slapped on his best drunken act. He let out a loud burp, slurring as he asked Tour what was up and why he was there. Furious, Tour demanded to know if this was really his best. Tour yelled, saying he actually thought Chris had changed for the better. Chris just smirked. Tour's anger was totally genuine. Boom, Tour was officially crossed off the suspect list. Dropping the act, he calmly told Tour they had a rat in the house. Totally lost, Tour asked what the heck he meant. Chris explained that someone out there wanted him ruined, so he was just playing along with their trap for now. Shocked, Tour asked if this whole trashy behavior was just an act. Chris nodded right back. Then he pointed his fancy wine glass right at Tour's nose. He told him that even the booze was totally fake. Tour took a sniff and realized it was just juice. He asked who the traitor was, but Chris said it was still too early to tell. For now, they just had to wait for the rat to take the bait. Then, Chris purposely smashed his glass right on the floor. A servant rushed in a total panic, asking what was wrong. Chris yelled that the wine was pure garbage and ordered him to fetch the butler for a fresh bottle. The poor guy nervously stammered that Cox was busy right now. Chris raised an eyebrow. Busy, huh? Slurring his words again, Chris said he would just go visit him himself. Tour honestly couldn't believe how insanely good the drunk acting was. Now watch exactly how he plays this. Minutes later, Chris stormed into Cox's office and slammed the bottle right on his desk. Startled, Cox asked what brought him there. But Chris just grabbed the bottle and dumped the juice straight over Cox's head, babbling like a madman. He accused the butler of looking down on him with cheap wine. Cox jumped up immediately, insisting he meant no disrespect and promising to send someone for the good stuff right away. But Chris wasn't having it. He ordered Cox to fetch it himself. Clenching his fists in pure frustration, Cox muttered that he was right in the middle of working. Chris just mocked him, asking if he seriously planned to work dripping wet. He told him to go change. So he better hurry up. Grinding his teeth, Cox forced himself to calm down and agreed. He walked off, completely unaware Chris was watching his every move. Inside, Cox was fighting a massive wave of rage. He felt he deserved an award for his patience, barely keeping his heavy hostility in check. The second Cox was gone, Chris checked the papers on the desk. He scanned them carefully and smirked. Yeah, his gut was telling him Cox was the rat. If so, the guy was definitely running some shady financial scams behind his back, but this still wasn't enough solid proof. He needed a smoking gun. He slid the papers right back into place, just as Cox walked in holding the exact bottle Chris had asked for. Chris thanked him, casually asking if he was mad. Cox instantly said absolutely not. He claimed he could never be mad at his master. Laughing it off, Chris praised the guy, saying that honestly, Cox was his absolute favorite. Cox bowed deep, saying he was super grateful. Then, the butler mentioned he had a message for him, when Chris asked what was up. Cox said his friends wanted a secret meetup at their usual hangout. That threw Chris off. He literally had no clue which friends Cox was even talking about. Faking total concern, Cox sighed. He said he wished Chris wouldn't hang with that crowd, though it wasn't his place to judge. Catching on to the act. Chris said he would totally go meet them. Cox reluctantly nodded, playing the part of a loyal servant who couldn't stop him. Inwardly, Chris was smiling. Everything was falling into place way better than he hoped. The very next day, at the shady secret spot. You and I both know these guys are fake. His so-called buddies hyped him up, saying they heard rumors he changed, but obviously didn't believe it. To them, he had always been the best of the bunch. Chris glanced at the little servant girl pouring his wine and felt instantly disgusted. What kind of absolute trash makes a young kid serve drinks in a place like this? The guys raised their glasses, the heavier dude cheering for a toast. Chris picked up his cup and gave the liquid a quick sniff. They asked what he was waiting for and pressured him to chug it down. Instead, he tossed the whole drink right into the fat guy's face. The dude freaked out over the spilled booze, screaming about what Chris thought he was doing. Calmly, Chris said he knew they spiked the sacred alcohol. Their sketchy reactions confirmed it. They obviously knew something nasty was in that cup. They scrambled to explain. But he just tapped one finger against the servant girl's forehead. A soft flash of light magic flared, instantly dropping her into a safe, deep sleep. Both guys stood there totally dumbfounded. Magic, they panicked, asking if he was using dark arts. Annoyed, Chris stomped his foot hard on the floor. He told them this wasn't the time to act shocked. Grabbing them both by the hair, he brutally smashed their faces straight into the wooden table. Unstoppable. He just kept slamming their heads down over and over until they were begging for mercy. The fat guy screamed, asking why he was doing this and pleading for calm. Chris gave a dark smile and pulled something from his jacket. If they seriously didn't know what they did wrong after all that, they could just die right here. He flashed a crazy sharp knife. Moments later, the room was a total disaster, and both guys were tied up tight. The skinny dude was literally crying for mercy. Chris just stabbed his knife into the floor, way too close for comfort, making the guy completely wet his pants in terror. Shaking, the skinny guy finally spilled everything. They were ordered to drug Chris, murder the young girl, and pin the whole crime directly on him. The other guy cried that the boss blackmailed them with their illegal drug trafficking secrets. And trust me, you're going to want to see who's behind this. Stick with me here, you and I are about to see Chris get totally ruthless. He slams his knife deep into the dirt, demanding to know who gave the orders, asking if they want their hands chopped off. Screaming in absolute panic, the skinny guy throws Cox right under the bus. Both dudes beg for mercy, swearing they will do whatever Chris wants. Chris double-checks. Are they serious? Do they swear on it? They frantically nod yes. He acts like he didn't hear them, forcing both guys to scream out their oath. Smirking, he accepts their word, then instantly casts a dark magic binding seal over them, planting the searing mark right on their heads while they scream in pure agony. The spell triggers, and boom, both guys hit the dirt. Next day, Cox busts into Count Cassar's office in full panic mode, yelling about a massive problem. The Count demands to know what happened. Cox drops a bomb. Chris committed cold-blooded murder. Cassar jumps up, totally shocked. Cox claims Chris got completely wasted last night. violently killed the girl serving his drinks, and just dumped her dead body straight into the river. He adds that they cannot simply cover this up easily, asking what the plan is while aggressively grinding his teeth. Count Cassar orders Chris dragged to the fiend's court, declaring he will use his authority for an instant trial. But as he walks off, he completely misses the sneaky, satisfied little smirk forming right on Cox's face. Later at the fiend's court, Count Cassar confidently takes the grand stage, while Chris just stands perfectly still over in the defendant's dock. When Cassar finishes reading off the heavy charges, Chris confidently denies every single thing, declaring total innocence. This response just makes Count Cassar absolutely furious. He loudly demands to know how Chris dares to lie with actual witnesses present. Totally calm, Chris asks how witnesses exist for something that never even happened. He calls it a wild misunderstanding, subtly glancing at his two buddies nearby. Then he calls the maid out, casually asking if this so-called dead server girl is her. The two hired guys are absolutely stunned seeing her. The girl confesses Chris actually took her home safely after she woke up, even handing her cash to help cover her heavy rent payments. Then she points right at the two dudes, exposing them to everyone as the real culprits who totally drugged Chris's drink earlier. Now here is the crazy part we need to watch carefully. The courtroom erupts into pure confusion, before those two dudes can even respond. Chris triggers that binding seal planted deep inside their minds, dialing the room's tension to absolute maximum. Seeing the living maid, those guys start hardcore panicking. But then their eyes roll completely back into their heads as the seal kicks in. Both dudes, totally under his influence, confess they filed fake reports on Cox's strict orders to frame Chris. Now Cox is visibly sweating bullets, accusing the two men of talking pure nonsense. He spins toward Count Cassar, screaming about defamation, claiming Chris and his crew are teaming up to completely frame him. Cox yells that this sick joke has gone way too far. Chris, totally unfazed, just sighs, already expecting Cox to act this desperate. He turns to Count Cassar, asking if he can make a formal request as the victim here. Count Cassar asks what he wants. Chris requests official permission to act as Cassar's powerful proxy, letting him interrogate Cox directly face to face. Count Cassar is left completely speechless by the bold request, especially seeing Chris's cocky, confident smile. After a brief, heavy pause, Cassar actually agrees, formally granting the proxy authority and orders Cox straight to the stand. Cox desperately tries arguing, but Cassar ignores him, warning Chris that any inappropriate behavior gets his authority revoked instantly. Chris accepts, promising to wrap it up incredibly fast. Stepping up, Chris formally declares that as proxy for the Magic Empire's great ruler, His Majesty, the mighty Demon Emperor, as a proud dark magic clan member ruling the Southern Kingdom's eastern region, and as Count Cassar's official representative. He will now start interrogating the accused. He turns to Cox, asking if he swears to answer truthfully. Cox nervously says yes. Chris asks again, this time heavily invoking the Demon Emperor's authority. Cox raises his palm, swearing a second time. Instantly, Chris drops the dark binding seal spell right on Cox's head, completely shocking everyone in the room. Cox screams in pure agony as the glowing mark brands his forehead. You and I both saw that coming, right? The witnessing nobles cannot believe a mere kid cast a 4-star dark magic spell. What they did not know is that Chris modified the binding seal to work flawlessly even at a lower star rank. The only catch, the target had to swear an oath twice. Cox walked directly into Chris's brilliant trap. Screaming wildly, Cox demands to know what Chris just did. Chris casually asks if he did not just swear to tell the truth, then demands to know the real reason Cox hired those two goons to frame him. As Chris heavily controls the seal inside his mind, the blinding pain spikes, forcing Cox to admit a blackmailer knowing about his dirty corruption threatened him. Cox cries out that this person ordered him to completely ruin Chris, which is why he tried sabotaging the kid for years. Something Count Cassar can barely process. Chris asks if Cox means the massive embezzlement he has been committing for a while, dropping the mic that he already discovered it. Stepping closer, Chris demands the ultimate boss's name. Cox begs him to stop, but Chris just tightens the magic seal's grip. Cox screams out again, finally stuttering the actual name. Chris refuses to release the spell, pushing even harder until Cox screams the full title. The Dark Magic Clan's second son, SR, dropping the spell, Cox. Overwhelmed by sheer terror and pain, tries sprinting away, knowing SR will definitely execute him. Then Chris. Trust me, you are not ready for this ending. Chris grabs a knight's sword, flawlessly beheading Cox publicly. Count Cassar stands utterly stunned, while Chris remains perfectly calm. All right, stick with me here. He marches straight into court, loudly declaring he executed that sinner using the Count's borrowed authority. The Count immediately demands an explanation. Chris fires back that sparing Coxa would just let the main family fake evidence and cover everything up completely. Still kicking Cox's body, he firmly adds that showing mercy is completely off the table. Plus, he wants to ensure everyone in that room remembers the hard truth. Tor and Melon watch from the sidelines, completely stunned. Then he reminds them about Esid's sabotage attempt, making Count Kazar visibly sweat. Opening a magical portal, the Count orders Chris to follow. Our boy steps right through, immediately asking where they just landed. Count Kazar reveals it is a hidden training ground, far from the court's prying eyes. He then asks if Chris plans on causing massive drama over the succession conflict. Chris just nods. Kazar admits a family's total power is directly tied to whichever successor they choose to support. While his decision was technically right, it still felt way too rushed. Regardless, given the current mess. They have zero choice but to back the first young lady, mainly because the first young lord is a totally bloodthirsty lunatic. Chris drops a bomb, he will just become the successor himself. Count Kazar is absolutely floored, calling the idea pure insanity. Chris argues a branch family member can take the throne if they have insane skills. Kazar claps back that it is an old loophole that basically never happens. Now watch closely. Chris plays dumb about politics, but casually asks why the Count genuinely thinks Esid was plotting his downfall. Kazar explains that while Chris might have been a child prodigy compared to Esid, he is currently lagging way behind in power. Cocky as ever, Chris promises to catch up fast, but he needs the Count's backing. He asks Kazar to use his authority to recommend him for the sacred dark rite in 2 months. Kazar drops a warning, reminding him he must reach 2 full stars to even enter, pointing out our boy literally just hit the 1-star mark. Unfazed, Chris promises to hit 2 stars before the deadline. When Kazar stays dead silent, Chris drops the father card, begging for his help. Days later, back at the castle. Wild rumors start flying about Chris's complete transformation. Word is Count Kazar has been personally training him, using a hardcore routine, so brutal that even veteran knights would be crying for mercy. Meanwhile, down in the hidden training grounds, Chris effortlessly slices straight through a massive mushroom. Mumbling to himself, he figures he should trap it with mud sword and finish it with black scythe sword. The Count is absolutely speechless, since he literally just introduced the black scythe technique that very morning, but Chris completely grasped it instantly. Another monster shroom spawns behind Kazar, and Chris questions if they really need to stick to the rigid training methods they have been doing. He wonders if keeping the sword styles totally separate is actually efficient, leaving the Count scratching his head in pure confusion. Chris rushes the mushroom, sensing a smarter method. He swings his blade with zero effort, chopping the target in one single motion. Kazar recognizes the mud sword and asks how he managed that. Chris explains that the humanoid mushroom limbs are tough enough to require the mud sword, but he actually wrapped the whole attack in pure black scythe energy. Count Kazar is internally screaming, fully aware a 1-star rookie has no business pulling off a stunt like that. Still, he keeps his cool, admitting the combo hits hard, but he warns that mixing styles makes casting curse magic way too difficult. Chris smirks, calling it super easy. He perfectly demonstrates a combo of both sword techniques while simultaneously blasting out a dark curse. You saw that too, right? He basically yawns, leaving Count Kazar absolutely speechless. 15 days later, he lies exhausted in the training dirt, groaning about how running is way too brutal. He cannot slack off though, especially since stamina is the absolute key to boosting his overall power level. Suddenly, a shadow blocks his sun. Melon asks if he is already dying. She reminds him their big duel is approaching fast and she is hyped. Feeling her crazy intense aura, he sits up, swearing he is grinding his absolute hardest to meet her sky-high expectations. Melon admits his growth is insane, but points out he is still just a 1-star rank. She warns if he fails her expectations, she will never kneel for him. Standing up, he admits that might be true. But even losing would teach him something useful, making the whole duel totally worth it. Melon just giggles, teasing his endless energy. Walking off, she hopes he provides good entertainment. He knows she is an elite 4-star powerhouse. Every single star rank has lower, middle, and upper tiers. As an upper 1-star, Chris is basically an ant compared to Melon. But our boy has a secret weapon, straight-up cash. Coming from extreme wealth, he proudly considers himself an absolute pay-to-win warrior. The next day, he asks Mari if she packed her bag. Proudly confirming, she does a cute spin to show off her brand new dress. She blushes, admitting it is their very first outing together, so she obviously had to dress to impress. So what do you and I make of this? He totally panics, shouting she wasn't invited, while Mari giggles, teasing that he is just worried about heatstroke. Stick with me here, guys. She happily added that serving him was a total pleasure, which just frustrated him more. He literally asked how a spirit could even get heatstroke. He then remembered asking Count Khazar a few days prior if he could just swap her out for a regular human maid. Khazar shot that down instantly. A master-servant contract was already locked in with Marie. He explained that a super high-ranking spirit like her simply couldn't be controlled without that kind of magical binding. Completely panicking, Chris desperately asked if there was any way to cancel it. Count Khazar just sighed. The only way to break it, a deep, passionate kiss with Marie. Plus, he casually reminded Chris that he was completely wasted when he made the contract. Chris aggressively scratched his head in pure frustration. Count Khazar was totally useless, and as always, he cursed his past self for being such an absolute idiot. Snapping back to the present, he told Marie she couldn't come along because he was heading somewhere super crowded. Looking totally heartbroken, Marie pouted, saying she had been really looking forward to this little trip. He tried explaining that her overwhelming spirit energy might actually hurt people, but she just started crying, sobbing about how she had been locked up in that mansion for decades. Seeing those tears, his jaw completely dropped. Finally, he reluctantly gave in and let her tag along, but ordered her to stay completely invisible to everyone else. She literally threw hearts in the air, excitedly thanking him and praising him for being the absolute best master. He just turned around and told her to follow him. As they casually strolled through the castle halls, Marie curiously asked where they were heading. He smirked, saying they were going somewhere to make a serious profit. Marie just lifted her skirt, revealing a handful of coins, proudly stating she already had plenty of cash. He instantly panicked, shouting that chump change meant absolutely nothing. Then he demanded she put the gold away. Totally confused, Marie asked if they were after gold or maybe some real estate. He bluntly told her she was way off. When she asked what it was, he said it was something from his past. Now pay attention here. He opens the carriage door and totally freaks out. Tour is already sitting inside, smugly telling him he is late. Chris demanded to know what he was doing there. Tour just shot back that he was keeping an eye on him, making sure he didn't act like total trash again. Chris promised that wouldn't happen, smoothly adding he was just going out to roll some dice. Tour was totally shocked, but Chris casually explained the facts. They were demons, right? So drinking and gambling were basically a cultural requirement. He even claimed the demon emperor highly recommended gambling, which was exactly why the whole thing was perfectly legal. Despite all that logic, Tour stubbornly insisted on tagging along, leaving Chris completely baffled. Sitting right across from him, Chris smirked, asking if little Tour was worried about his big bro. Caught off guard, Tour furiously stuttered, demanding to know why he would ever care. He quickly yelled that he was only worried Chris would totally embarrass their family name. As the carriage rolled out, Chris leaned in and warned that for a guy like Tour, a total little nerd, this place might be way too intense. Did he even know the rules? Tour snapped back, claiming it was just a stupid card game, swearing he would absolutely crush Chris's arrogant face. Playing along, Chris faked a gasp, dramatically saying he was just so terrified. On the outside, he smiled warmly, but inside, his cocky mind was already mocking Tour, calling him a sweet, naive summer child. He was completely confident that today's biggest sucker was Tour. Just moments later, they finally arrived at a massive, towering castle casino. Tour stared in awe, whispering he never imagined a building could look like this. Meanwhile, an invisible Marie squealed that her heart was pounding. Chris tossed her a tiger mask, telling him to stop gaping like a total peasant and put it on. Getting inside required them to keep their identities completely hidden from everyone. He then ordered Marie to stay perfectly invisible so nobody would spot her. Leaning in close, he whispered something secret, leaving her completely stunned. "I know what you're thinking, he's scheming, right?" Giggling, Marie promised to obey while Chris secured his black mask. Tor cluelessly asked where she went. But Chris just brushed him off, telling him not to worry about it as they casually stepped inside. The second they walked through those doors, every single noble and servant in the room froze, locking their eyes onto them. Still, as Chris and Tor played it cool, these elite snobs instantly marked them as completely clueless rookies. Basically, fresh meat walking right into the lion's den. Chris suddenly turned to Tor with a sly grin, asking if he was brave enough to make a little bet on who could win the most cash in an hour. The stakes. If Tor won, Chris would respectfully call him Big Bro for a month. Tor gasped, asking if he was serious, which Chris confirmed. But if Tor lost, he'd have to call Chris beautiful, honorable king, emperor, majesty, brother. Tor was totally baffled. Chris just shoved a fat stack of cash at him, teasing that he could back out if he was too scared. Absolutely fuming. Tor violently snatched the money away, screaming that nobody was scared. With eyes burning with pure determination, he immediately stormed off to the tables, declaring he'd go first. Chris casually took a seat at a card table. An old guy next to him hyped him up, saying victory was totally his, and with just a bit more play, he'd easily win a massive fortune since his skills were so sharp. Chris acted super hyped, loudly bragging that his luck was totally unbeatable today. But honestly, he knew exactly how these dirty scams worked. First, the house lets rookies win a cute little amount to boost their egos. Then, once the target gets way too cocky, they bait them into dropping everything on one massive bet. Chris knew this shady routine perfectly. Suddenly, he heard Tor screaming that nothing made sense. He was so sure he had a winning card. Chris just smirked evilly, knowing Tor had already walked right into his trap. Using his best mocking voice, he loudly asked Tor why he didn't just go home and cry to sleep, which made Tor explode. Tor aggressively snapped back, asking if Chris wasn't also bleeding cash over there. Chris smoothly replied he had only lost 500 rupees. Tor then screamed that he was already down about 1,000 rupees, instantly causing the nearby tables to whisper and stare. Chris was absolutely thrilled to notice the local gamblers had already marked Tor as a total sucker. "Trust me, you and I both know a swindler is gonna bleed him dry real soon." "Alright, stick with me, we are about to watch the wildest scam unfold." He asked if Tor was still playing. Angry, Tor snatched the cash, ready for more. Chris just smirked. He totally pretended to stop him, but secretly, he wanted Tor to lose every single penny so he would become the absolute perfect bait. A second later, Tor was dead serious at the table. Staring at his cards, he completely missed the servant and the scammer silently rigging the entire game. Then, Chris spotted the guy next to Tor tap his knee. The exact signal he was waiting for, right then. Marie popped up completely invisible next to him, whispering that she found his targets. Chris praised her epic work, while Tor in the back was losing his mind over dropping 10,000 rupees. Minutes later, Chris reached the target spot with Marie's help and ordered her to bust open the door. She did exactly that. Inside, the demons freaked out, instantly blocking his path and demanding to know who he was. Chris whipped off his mask, like, "Haven't you recognized me yet?" It hit them fast. They realized it was the damn young master and nervously asked what business he had. Chris bossed them around, ordering them to fetch their master. Soon enough, Grantle, the merchant guild leader, showed up looking completely stressed out, asking if Chris came to visit him. Chris knew Grantle was supposedly this absolute genius merchant, but honestly, the guy was just totally corrupt. "Watch closely now." Chris demanded a private chat, and Grantle nervously asked what this was all about. Chris fired back that Grantle's crew scammed his little brother, someone he actually cared about, yet this guy had the absolute nerve to play completely dumb. Grantle was totally shocked, asking if Tor was the guy in the tiger mask. Chris confirmed it, dropping the heavy fact that Tor was Count Khazar's literal hero. Grantle started sweating, desperately trying to dodge the blame. He claimed he just ran the casino and had zero clue what the others were doing. Chris straight up asked if he wanted to die right then. Marie transformed, revealing her terrifying true banshee form, which absolutely terrified Grantle to his core. He slammed onto his knees, begging and swearing that if he knew Tor was the Count's son, This never would have happened. Grantle cried out for mercy. Chris coldly asked if those were just completely empty promises. But Grantle swore he was being totally sincere and offered crazy compensation. When asked how much, Chris demanded a cool 1 million rupees, which left Grantle absolutely paralyzed. He panicked, saying they didn't have that kind of cash lying around, so Chris casually dropped it to 200,000 rupees. Grantle knew that was basically his entire life savings, but weakly asked if that was enough. Chris smiled and said yeah, but added he needed one more little thing from them. Grantle, literally shaking, asked what it was. Cut to a bit later, loaded with new weapons. Marie couldn't believe he blew the extorted 200,000 rupees on battle gear. She proudly hyped up his genius plan. Chris totally agreed with that confident swagger. Then Marie pointed out the sword Grantle handed over, recognizing it as grenade. A holy sword bought with a hero's soul. I know what you're thinking, why this one? Well, countless demons actually hunted it down. Since it was the exact weapon from that fallen hero, even though it looked super rusty now. Chris just grinned, saying it was all part of the master plan. Then he told her to pipe down and handed her something, asking if he was right that she had been eyeing it earlier. Marie gasped. It was a beautiful flower pendant necklace. Chris smoothly explained it was a gift just for her, saying she could never move past her old regrets without it. He told her it was to help her find peace and move on, warning her not to get the wrong idea. Marie confessed that, alive or dead. This was literally the very first time she ever got a present like this. She thanked him from the bottom of her heart. Chris played it cool, saying let's go home. She happily agreed, hugging the precious necklace tight as they walked. She promised to put her whole heart into repaying him, casually saying she would make his blood juice even tastier now. Chris freaked out, reminding her he absolutely refused to drink that stuff. He yelled that she was repaying his kindness with pure evil, but Marie casually dropped the bomb that the blood was already mixed right into the strawberry juice he had been chugging this whole time. Disgusted, he asked if she was joking and told her to stop saying creepy things. Suddenly, he stopped dead in his tracks, feeling like he forgot something huge. He brushed it off, totally ignoring the feeling, assuming he would remember it later. Completely oblivious that he left Tor behind at the casino, literally shaking with rage, and with only one single rupa to his name. The next morning, Tor busted into his room absolutely furious, screaming his name. Chris woke up super confused just as his pillow was violently yanked from under his head. Sitting up, an enraged Tor demanded to know why he ditched him. Yelling he almost got sold off as a debt slave because of him. Right then, it clicked for Chris. Tor screamed he was insanely lucky someone actually recognized him. Yawning, Chris gave a lazy apology, guessing Grantle must have saved him. Then he cheekily asked Tor if he was addressing him the wrong way, reminding the guy he lost the bet and had to pay up. He ordered Tor to call him esteemed king, emperor, majesty, brother, just like they agreed, leaving Tor completely speechless for a second. Trembling with pure rage, Tor tried mumbling it while picking his nose, pretending he didn't hear him. Then he literally ripped the pillow in half and screamed the full title. Esteemed king, emperor, majesty, brother. Chris flicked away the nonsense with a wink, mockingly telling Tor to show some real respect and try way harder to get it right next time. So what do we take from this? Never bet against Chris. Tor stormed out screaming for revenge, warning him to be ready. Stick with me here. You and I are about to watch Chris smile, realizing the adorable Tor growing up to kill him. Yeah, totally his own fault. Then his mind jumps to Sked, son of Langun. That guy is the acting dark magic clan leader and the current #1 young lord. He honestly didn't care much about Sked, since he wasn't the real Christian anyway. But get this, if he wanted that young lord title. A massive showdown was totally unavoidable. He planned to settle that brotherly beef real soon. Still, to pull that off, he desperately needed Melon backing him up. Then he glances over. There is his weapon bag, with the holy sword grenade just chilling right next to it. He gets dressed and casually walks over. He knows perfectly well that countless demons have tried to wield this holy sword. The only reason grenade was treated like some dusty antique. Nobody could actually handle the thing. Time to test the waters. He picks it up by the chain wrapping it, but boom, a huge wave of electricity shocks his hand, forcing him to drop it. Totally shocked, he realizes the sword is actively rejecting his dark energy. Honestly, completely expected. I mean, it is an artifact literally built to channel holy light magic. But he figures, hey, it is just a weapon. If he can decode why it hates dark energy, he could totally use it. He yanks a hammer from his bag and just starts wailing on Grenade. The sword sparks, desperately fighting back. But he completely ignores the pain and smashes it again, only for his hammer to shatter into tiny pieces. Next up, two completely different heavy-duty hammers. He tells the sword to submit already, promising to smash it all night long. Grenade literally starts trembling at his crazy determination. Fast forward a few days to the super-secret training grounds. Count Khazar is standing right there with Tur, and a lady asks if his preparations are good to go. Tur nods yes, then he asks who the mystery lady is. Watch closely, because you and I are meeting a heavy hitter, when the lady finally turns to look at him. He recognizes her instantly and drops a respectful greeting. It is the commander of the Black Shadow Knights, Marion herself. The commander greets him right back, saying it has definitely been a minute. Get this, Marion is the Elder Clan Chief's daughter, master of the Dark Magic Clan, and older sister to Kantar and Viscount Langam. As the Elder Chief's personal bodyguard, she handles black ops and internal surveillance. We are talking absolute top-tier elite of the Dark Magic Clan. So naturally, he starts wondering why such a massive VIP randomly showed up right here. Count Khazar quickly steps in and explains that Marion came around on totally unofficial business regarding Cox. Marion literally laughs out loud, saying Aide pulled off a seriously shameless move. Chris starts sweating, wondering if Marion actually plans to protect Sked. That would be a huge problem, he casually tells Marion that the Elder Clan Chief must have tons of free time to care about such tiny issues. She snaps back, saying it is super bold to just assume that. Since the Chief does not care about kids fighting. Nope, the Chief is actually interested in him, which honestly totally blows his mind. Still, he figures this could be his golden ticket to win the Chief's favor. But then Marion just straight up asks if he is being brave or incredibly stupid. Reminding him he is not even 2 stars yet and already picking a fight with Melon. She seriously tells him to just cancel the duel. Chris grips Grenade tight, thanking Marion for caring. But he smirks, saying he has his own game plan, literally unwrapping the sword's chains right there. I know what you're thinking. A dark wizard using a holy sword. Marion thinks the same thing. She asks if it's really Grenade, calling him officially insane and too problematic. Then she whips her head toward Count Khazar, straight up dropping his first name, Reborn, and asks if he seriously still believes Christian actually changed for the better. Reborn totally backs him up, but Marion completely shuts that belief down. Pointing out this is the exact same Christian trying to bring a literal holy sword to a duel. Chris asks Marion if there is some rule against using it, declaring victory is all that matters. No matter how dirty the trick or method is, Marion quickly fires back that even. The Elder Clan Chief failed to master Grenade, warning him the sword's holy power will absolutely vaporize him into ashes. He just smirks, asks if that is true, and yanks off the scabbard. Marion screams that it is too dangerous, but he flawlessly wields the glowing sword right in front of them, leaving her completely speechless. Stunned, Marion asks if it is just some cheap fake. He literally tosses Grenade straight at her, asking if she wants to check it herself. She catches the blade, but bam! It instantly blasts her with electricity the second it senses her dark energy. She drops it fast, angrily demanding to know how he is doing this. He casually scoops Grenade back up. It is completely calm in his hands now. With a grin, he says it is a strict trade secret. Resting Grenade over his shoulder like a total boss, he tells Marion she can be absolutely certain of just one thing. The only reason he could wield the weapon that totally defeated the Elder Clan Chief. It is simply because he is an absolute genius. The Count is shocked, but honestly, those confident words hit him deep. Suddenly, this massive, echoing laugh rips through the training grounds. A voice calls out, saying he is always so wildly entertaining, making everybody instantly turn around. They spin around to see Melon stepping right out of a magic portal. Melon cannot believe he actually tamed a holy sword, but quickly brushes it off, asking why it even matters. Flashing a totally terrifying smile, she declares that today is officially his final day breathing. Then Melon just launches forward, swinging her blade right at his head. Luckily, he easily blocks her strike with Grenade, exactly as expected. Melon's insane power and blinding speed are on a completely different level now. With zero restrictions holding her back, she is absolutely overwhelming him. She rushes him again, and he instantly realizes he cannot close this massive power gap at all. He blocks Melon's heavy strike again, and boom! Grenade blasts pure light magic to completely deflect the dark magic from her blade. So what do you and I take from this? Both Radon and Marion see the clash. A stunned Marion turns to Radon, realizing Chris has already totally surpassed him at that age. Alright, you and I are jumping right back into this insane fight. Radon knows it ain't over yet. He asks Marion if she sees how Chris is actually handling the holy sword. They watch closely. The light from Grenade fades every time his dark magic flares up. Still, Melon is seriously struggling to block him. His strikes pack both light and dark energy now. Radon calls the power unreal, but thinks his dark aura looks super unstable. Marion totally disagrees. She explains Chris is perfectly micromanaging his dark energy so the holy sword won't flat out reject him. Meanwhile, he pushes Melon way back, grinning. He asks how she's holding up and if she's having fun yet. She ignores the trash talk. Instead, she admits something's been bugging her. Is he literally predicting her every single move? He calmly replies he just has really sharp eyes. He breaks it down. Every sword swing has a massive tell. She has to lift her arms before bringing the blade down, right? That forces her shoulders and upper body to shift first. It's a dead giveaway that literally every fighter has. She sighs, letting loose a massive wave of dark energy, asking how he plans to handle it. She wraps it straight around him. She mocks him, reminding the kid that the Black Swamp Knights are basically magic swordsmen. But too bad for her. A blinding burst of holy magic erupts right out of him, instantly purifying all that dark aura. He sighs in total relief. Yeah, that could have been game over. Super confused, she asks if he just used some crazy purification artifact. He ignores her completely and cheerfully thanks Radon. He claims he only survived because of him. Meanwhile, Radon is clueless, since that item was supposed to be locked in his vault. Chris casually admits he has sticky fingers sometimes. Tor and Radon just stand there speechless. Why is this kid so proud of stealing? He casually pulls something else from his coat, dropping straight facts. In a real fight, having top-tier gear is a skill. Now watch this move closely, I promise you won't see it coming. He tosses the item right at a shocked Melon. Boom. She barely dodges, but he instantly chucks another one. He yells out that dodging is totally useless. The second bomb detonates into massive flames, shocking even him with its power. He is hyped he jacked Grantel's cash to buy these bad boys. Because man, they are absolutely getting the job done. He yells into the smoke, teasing her. He knows she's still breathing and tells her to step out. Then suddenly, a massive sword shoots right out of the fire, flying straight at his face. He calmly raises Grenade and blocks the heavy blade. The enemy's sword cracks and shatters into pieces. Radon flexes like a proud dad, saying he finally gets why Chris threw that corrosion bomb earlier. He reminds Marion he called the kid a total genius. Marion stays totally chill, but she definitely agrees. Melon steps out of the flames, absolutely furious, marching right toward him. She flashes a wicked smirk and dashes forward at insane speed. She screams that this is way too fun, daring him to make his next move. Marion and Radon completely panic, realizing Melon has fully lost her mind in battle. But our guy. He just steps aside smoothly and parries her wild punch with a heavy slap. Melon is completely stunned. He just brushed off her attack like it was nothing. He instantly closes the gap and swings Grenade right at her neck. He casually mentions that it looks like he wins this one. He asks if that showdown was satisfying enough for her. Left with just a scratch on her cheek, Melon is in total shock. Radon is practically bursting with pride over his boy, while Marion is just speechless. Suddenly, Melon bursts into hysterical laughter. She asks if he's seriously asking her that when her blood is still pumping this crazy. He tells her to give an answer to his previous offer real soon. Even though he won, he says he will totally respect it if she turns him down. After all, you can't exactly force real loyalty. She looks at him and asks if she joins his crew, will he keep giving her epic fights exactly like this one? He grabs her hand, pulls her up, and promises he will do whatever she wants. Let's pause for a sec. You and I know how crazy his power is, right? Marion is in her room, completely mind-blown by how Chris handled that aura. Handling dark energy like that is nuts. She remembers the elder clan leader failing to master Grenade and asking if it was literally impossible for him too. The elder had explained that sure, he could wield it for a second. But dark energy waves are literally always shifting and constantly changing. To truly master grenade, someone has to perfectly adapt to those waves faster than the sword senses them. Who could actually pull that off mid-battle? He guessed maybe only a literal demon or the demonic dragon could manage it. Or, if not one of them, maybe just an absolute madman who breathes dark energy like it's fresh air. Marion thinks back to Chris confidently asking her how he did. He wanted to know if he earned her praise. She smiles, remembering that cocky grin, and wonders if her father's lifelong dream might actually come true right now. Cut to the next day. Down in the castle kitchen, she spots a huge orc chef carefully chopping something. It turns out to just be a tiny little strawberry. The massive orc gently places it right on top of a fresh cake. Chris looks super grossed out. He can't believe this huge beast is out here baking cute strawberry cakes. Marie just laughs, telling him that despite the chef's scary looks, his baking skills are absolute top tier. The chef then turns around and asks Chris why he's visiting the kitchen. Chris says he came down to bake some cookies. Marie asks what the occasion is, and he admits he wants to give them to someone. Marie gets teary-eyed, asking if it's for another girl. He panics, yelling it's a misunderstanding, though technically it is for a woman. So what do you and I learn here? Our boy creates pure chaos everywhere. Marie, still pouting, helped him tie on an apron while he rolled up his sleeves. The chef offered to bake the cookies for him, but he refused. Stick with me here, guys, he said, making snacks with pure heart is what matters. Baking cookies was actually his hidden talent. Right at that moment, red liquid splashed across his face. He turned around horrified, seeing two huge orc chefs smashing strawberries so violently it looked like an absolute massacre. Screaming, he asked if they were totally sure there wasn't real blood in there. Marie just laughed. A moment later, he rushed over to Marion, who was getting ready to leave. She asked what was up, and he said he came to say goodbye. Smiling, she appreciated it, adding that he must be super exhausted from yesterday's intense duel. He shrugged, saying he felt completely fine. Then he handed her a small box. Opening it up, she found fresh cookies inside. Clearing her throat, she shyly told him he really didn't need to prepare a going-away gift. He replied he was just thrilled to see her again. Redon then remembered Chris asking if there was any food that Marion actually liked. It finally clicked, that was why the kid was looking for him yesterday. He thought to himself, Chris really knows exactly how to win people over. Chris excitedly urged Marion to taste one, proudly bragging that he baked them himself. She asked if that was true, and he nodded. She took a bite and instantly realized it was crazy delicious, but kept her cool, calmly telling him it was tasty. He smiled, saying he was glad she liked it. Marion then said she owed him something in return for such an awesome gift. Smiling, she asked if he wanted anything. He told her he just wanted her to be his real aunt. Surprised, she mentioned they were already blood relatives, so there had to be a hidden meaning. Watch closely now, she asked if he was truly joining the sacred dark rite. He nodded. She figured he was trying to score her support for the upcoming massive succession war. But she explained that main family adults had to stay completely neutral with candidates. Those were the strict rules. He clarified it was just a genuine request. He only wanted to get closer to her. She called his bluff, asking if he seriously had zero hidden motives. He swore he didn't, saying if she ever tried to secretly support him out of pity, he would straight up reject it. Then he hit her with puppy dog eyes. Laughing, she admitted she didn't hate his honesty. Since her nephew baked such amazing cookies and gifted them to her, she couldn't help but appreciate the kid. He thanked her warmly. Marion then asked if she could score more cookies next time. He smirked, saying that depended on her. Curious, she asked what the heck that meant. He teased that if she made him sad, he'd get grumpy and totally lose his baking touch. Flashing her two-finger hearts, he asked if she understood. Sighing, she got serious and asked what he thought about joining the Black Shadow Knights. He was about to answer when she interrupted, praising his insane duel against Melon. She said he might actually be a bigger prodigy than the Elder Clan leader himself. But his rivals wouldn't be easy pushovers, and she honestly feared he might just burn out before his talent fully bloomed. Confident, he said if he couldn't conquer the mountains ahead, he wouldn't mind dying. He appreciated her worry but refused to lose. She found his confidence crazy, but smiled anyway, thinking that maybe Chris could actually pull it off. She agreed not to stop him from walking a bloody path. He was a demon, after all. You feel the tension here. Hopping on her horse, cookie box in hand, she warned him to watch out for the first young miss. Radon asked why they should be careful of Jolien instead of Acid, since Jolien was famously the most gentle of all 5 young lords. Marian just ominously replied that they'd understand soon enough. Chris thanked her, promising to remember it. She turned her horse, saying catch you next time. A minute later he laid on his bed, lost in thought. Both his dad and aunt hit that epic 6-star level, yet he hadn't heard much about their actual roles in the Great War. This made him wonder just how many absolute monsters existed in the Magic Empire, probably enough to completely overrun the light domain. Still, he absolutely refused to let his past repeat itself, reminding himself he needed to get insanely strong, fast. A month later, he strolled into Radon's office, asking if he called. Radon said yes, he had major news to share. But looking at him, Radon was completely mind-blown to realize Chris had already hit the 2-star rank. Radon could barely believe this insane leveling speed in just 30 days. Chris just shrugged, casually reminding him he promised to do it, so why the shock? Chris then asked what the urgent meeting was about. Radon took a breath, replying he finally got word back from the main family. He explained he nominated both Chris and Thauer for the sacred dark rite, but only Thauer got the green light. The reason? Chris's reckless spending, massive womanizing, heavy drinking, property damage, and honestly, even flat-out robbery. All of which was totally true. Chris took psychic damage, dramatically collapsing to the floor, crushed by his own trashy past. Radon was furious, screaming about them disrespecting his son. And that's where we leave it, guys. Wild right. Alright guys, stick with me here as we dive back in. Chris asks Radon if Viscount Langa pulled the strings, but Radon just shakes his head. The actual final boss is Loin, which Chris completely saw coming. Loin is straight out of the main bloodline, and the #1 pick for the upcoming Dark Sacred Rite. This whole event is a wild ritual where contenders suck up pure darkness from the negative dimension. But since the dark energy stash is super limited, these guys are basically forced into an all-out deathmatch to set up the pecking order. The higher your rank, the more darkness you snag. That gives you a massive cheat code for becoming the next young lord, the clan's heir. Chris totally knows if Loin dominates and hoards all that power, his dream of becoming the 6th young lord is going to be insanely hard. Radon tries to chill him out, telling him not to stress, promising to hit up the main family again and even ask Marian for backup if needed. But Chris instantly rejects it, saying he'll solo this whole thing himself. Radon just puts a hand on his kid's shoulder. He respects his skills and sees the glow up, but insists this is big boy stuff the adults need to handle. Chris drops this smooth little smile, saying he loves the support, but he's already got his own cracked methods lined up. Catching that smirk, Radon instantly gets suspicious. He just knows his boy is cooking up something crazy behind the scenes. All he can do is ask if Chris already has a plan. Chris fires back, asking Radon if any kid from Count Timon's branch family is joining the event. Radon confirms Timon's 3rd son is pulling up. Now watch this, he absolutely snaps. He screams that Count Timon is a total snake allied with Known, with 0 right to join the Dark Sacred Rite. He rants that the guy is just a massive fraud who only knows how to command demon beasts. Chris is honestly shook by this totally out-of-character meltdown. He suddenly realizes just how insanely protective his dad can really be. He calmly tells Radon to take a breath, explaining he just needs to prove his worth. He already knew. The Timon family is dropping a black pill event super soon, and he's planning to join as a handler. Meanwhile, over at the clan head's insanely huge castle, Marian reports she personally checked up on Christian, exactly as she was ordered. The clan boss asks how the kid is doing. She hypes him up, saying Chris is basically in a league of his own now. Still, the boss isn't buying it. He remembers the kid as an arrogant little brat acting like a genius, when really he was totally fake. But Marian swears up and down that Chris is completely built different now. The clan head asks if she really thinks this kid can pull off their ultimate wish. Literally, the only reason this old guy is even still breathing. Using heaven-defying, hacked magic just to dodge death. Marian hesitates for a sec, knowing her father's crazy dream is his absolute only lifeline. She finally admits she can't say for sure, but Chris might actually be their best shot. This totally sparks the clan head's interest, deciding he needs to keep tabs on the boy. He then asks if it's true Chris is jumping into the upcoming Dark Sacred Rite. Marion confirms it, saying the whole clan is already expecting him to show up. When she asks if he's going to step in, the clan boss just shakes his head, saying absolutely not. He's not messing with petty drama, and you and I both know the rule: if Chris can't ace a tiny test, he's no fierce beast, right? Shocked by his cold vibes, Marion claps back, reminding him that even if Chris is some fierce beast, he's still literally a kid. She argues he at least deserves a fair shot to absorb darkness and unlock his full potential, but the clan head just glares, shutting her down instantly. She looks away, totally out of arguments. Marion knows the clan head has literally always been exactly like this. Way more brutal on the people he actually expects great things from. Then the boss mentions that since she's pushing this so hard, she must really be a fan of Chris. Then he summons a blood-sucking demon, and boom, a dude instantly spawns right in front of them. Meet Simon, the head butler of the dark magic clan. Simon hits a deep bow and asks if the big boss called for him. The clan head asks if Simon was secretly listening to everything they just talked about, and Simon casually agrees, but asks if he's really just supposed to babysit that despicable little brat, Christian. The boss confirms, ordering Simon to report every single move Chris makes until the dark rite. Simon nods, fully locking in on his mission, but then he asks if he can pull a tiny prank while stalking the kid, completely shocking Marion. The clan head hits him with a massive death glare, but surprisingly says yes, warning him not to take it too far. Simon flashes the psycho smile and instantly dips out to start his mission. Marion just closes her eyes, praying Chris makes it out alive. Meanwhile, out on the road, our boy Chris is chilling in a wagon, totally lost in his thoughts. He knows he's speedrun his way to the 2-star rank, thanks to his insane talent, but even with all that crazy grinding, his stamina and dark energy tank are still way too low. He knows jumping to 3 stars right now is literally impossible. Bro realizes he desperately needs a black pill to power level his dark energy reserves in record time. He wonders if the Timon family's black pill event is pure RNG or a setup just to bait him. Honestly, he considers it massive luck either way. The only catch is that bagging the car demon beast doesn't guarantee him a pill. He's going to have to clear some ridiculous special conditions first. The wagon rolls up to Grantle, who looks stressed out of his mind, asking what on earth brought them all the way out here. Chris casually asks how he's holding up and if he seriously showed up empty-handed. Grantle totally panics, quickly saying absolutely no way. Always bringing gifts. That's where we leave it. Chris is absolutely unimpressed. Alright, stick with me here, we are jumping straight into a crazy shakedown. He smacked the money bag, dropping it hard on the floor. Grantle just stared, totally lost. Chris asked why he brought such a pathetic gift, saying he clearly forgot his place. Absolutely furious, Chris accused Grantle of running illegal side hustles. He sarcastically asked if dodging casino taxes was bringing in the big bucks. He also demanded to know about the merch Grantle scammed from the Merchant Guild, and if he was still out there kidnapping innocent people. Surrounded and totally defeated, Grantle desperately screamed out, asking what Chris actually wanted. Chris smirked and said he would let it slide this once, but warned him to drop the shady business immediately. Grantle nodded like his life depended on it. Then Chris got down to business. He needed an ash pill. Grantle physically shook, knowing those black market prices had just skyrocketed to insane levels. Patting the guy right on the head, Chris said he totally understood the struggle. Then he glanced back at Marie standing right behind him, asking if she was ready. Marie just giggled, instantly shifting into her terrifying demonic form, revealing 2 razor-sharp knives, bragging about her top-tier torture skills. Terrified, Grantle dropped to his knees screaming he would get the ash pill right away. Smiling, Chris pointed out how much easier things flow when people cooperate. Then he hit him with a cheeky wink, adding that while Grantle was busy, he should also score a dagger sharp enough to slice through heavy armor, leaving Grantle totally confused. Backing up toward their wagon, Chris casually waved goodbye. As they rode off, Grantle slammed his forehead into the dirt, cursing him out loud. Marie asked if they were heading back home, but Chris shot that down. He had one more stop. Soon, they pulled up to a shady potion shop. Watch closely here because this is where things get interesting. Chris told the driver to wait, stepping inside with Marie. He scanned the shelves and pointed. The shop owner pulled the item down and slid it across the table. Marie stared at the glowing liquid, asking what the heck it did. Chris played it cool, saying he had a special use for it. Marie gave him major side eye, making him sweat nervously under pressure. Squinting her eyes, she seriously asked if he bought it for Radam. Nodding, Chris explained that given his father's old age, he definitely needed to protect him. The shop owner looked visibly shocked. Spinning around, Chris aggressively yelled at the guy to keep his mouth totally shut, swearing on the Count's actual honor. Panicking, the owner promised to be super careful. The very next day, Tour and Radam saw him off. Tour casually called him brother, but Chris instantly demanded his proper title. Trembling, Tour quickly corrected himself, calling him Honorable King, Emperor, Majesty, brother. Calming down, Tour sarcastically mentioned the Black Pill House was super dangerous, teasing him to make sure he did not get completely wrecked out there. Smirking, Chris asked if Tour was actually worried about him, blushing. Tour stammered that he just wanted a proper duel later. Radam cut in, telling them to stop bickering like little kids, and ordered Chris to totally smash those arrogant snobs from Turin. Chris confidently fired back that he would, promising to return with epic news. Right after, Radam turned to Tour asking what that whole King-Emperor title meant. Caught off guard, Tour quickly snapped that Radam really did not need to know. Much later at Count Timon's place, the head butler blocked them again, stating they were absolutely banned from stepping inside the grand mansion. His squad was furious, screaming at the butler for making them wait so long, demanding to know if this guy even realized who they were dealing with. Totally stone-faced, the butler explained it was a direct order from Alaguas, making it clear Alaguas owed absolutely zero favors to a useless trash. Glaring with pure rage, Chris challenged the butler, asking if he was seriously suggesting they go out and find their own place. The cold look alone made the butler flinch hard. However, "I know what you are thinking, take him out." His angry servant thought the exact same thing, literally begging Chris for permission to end this butler right there. But Chris held him back, calmly asking who would foot the bill for their new spot. Stuttering, the butler awkwardly said they could just bill Count Timon directly. Smiling wickedly, Chris gladly accepted that challenge. Shortly after, they rolled up to a massive estate with a giant fountain and pure gold trim. It was a stupidly luxurious VIP hotel. One servant nervously asked how much this place cost, and another guessed at least a fortune in rupees. Chris just smirked, saying it is not every day you get a free pass to blow someone else's cash, giving them one single hour to unpack. After getting settled, they planned to hit the bar. Suddenly, a heavy suitcase wiggled. Hearing a weird noise inside, he whipped around to check it out. A bright blue light flashed. Bursting with excitement, Marie popped right out of the luggage. Hyped that this stunning mansion was the absolute perfect spot to serve him. Totally stunned, he demanded to know why she was even here. Cheering happily, she confessed to sneaking into his bags because she swore to be his loyal maid forever. Speechless from the ambush, he just let out a massive sigh. Laughing out loud, Marie teased him, saying his whole shy and embarrassed flustered routine was just too adorable, claiming his face proved how much he missed her. He was ready to shut that down when some rude guy suddenly started screaming at him. It was Alwa, the third son of Count Timon, completely losing his mind over their insane hotel bill. Chris expected this guy to drop formalities instantly. Throwing shade, he asked if this punk wasn't the main star of the whole Black Pig house. Then he reminded Alwa that he was the one who told them to find their own place, so he followed orders. Plus, a VIP guest simply cannot stay in some basic motel. So he bought an acceptable mansion instead. Smiling, "You and I love this petty energy, right?" "All right, stick with me here." Chris asked if Aloy was seriously throwing a massive tantrum over such a tiny amount of cash. Since Alwa was a guy who couldn't even treat a guest right, the money was actually a cheap price for a much-needed manners lesson. Furious, Alwa crushed the receipt, unleashing his dark aura to summon his pet beast, dripping with absolute venom. He asked Chris if he really wanted to die today. Chris recognized the technique instantly. It was Count Timon's subjugation art. A forbidden dark magic, totally different from normal taming. It controlled demonic beasts using pure fear, pumping them with secret formulas causing wild hallucinations, intense paranoia, and some seriously unnatural hype. Still, the spell looked super complicated. and Chris realized mastering this technique quickly was impossible. So, deciding to skip the hard stuff. He figured he should just beat the beast totally unconscious instead, turning back to Marie. He asked if wiping out that terrifying monster might require a weapon. Laughing out loud, Marie pulled out a basic wooden stick, handing it over. He grinned, mocking Ulwa by asking what he was doing. Wasn't he going to attack like a real demon? Ulwa screamed not to give him orders. Calling him useless trash, then ordered his pet to attack. The beast lunged at Chris, jaws wide open. Chris blocked with the wooden stick, but those razor-sharp teeth snapped the wood, launching him backward with insane force. He rolled across the dirt. Jumping up fast, he admitted the pet was pretty tough but asked if a 2-on-1 wasn't a bit unfair. Then he upped the stakes, if he won. Aloy would have to join the hunt as a guard, not just a shepherd. After all, they needed some real drama to make this worth it. Chris called him a cheap demon and asked what he thought of the deal. Furious. Aloy jumped behind his beast and charged forward, swearing he would force Chris to kneel. He ordered the massive creature to raise its claw and smash the ground. Now watch this closely. The impact shattered the ground, but when the dust cleared, Chris was completely gone. Ulwa blinked in pure confusion, wondering where he went. Not knowing Chris was right behind him. With a dramatic swing, Chris whacked the back of Ulwa's head with his wooden stick. He struck him repeatedly before landing back on the ground, playfully spinning the stick in his hand. Asking if it hurt, he warned Aloy not to cry because tears wouldn't earn him any mercy. Ulwa just screamed in pure rage, charging at Chris again. But before he could land a hit, a grim reaper spawned right behind him. His terrified pet slammed on the brakes, running away to hide behind the luggage. Trembling like a leaf, Ulwa demanded to know how Chris dared to spook his pet, Soko. Chris casually explained he just dropped a basic 2-star illusion spell, which apparently was way too much for Aloy's pathetic taming arts to handle. Ulwa screamed at him to shut up, starting another cast as Chris noticed this guy was trying to summon his horse demon. This time, Chris yelled, asking if he knew the trademark of a trash-tier loser. Aloy grunted, asking what he meant, but Chris didn't answer with words. Instead, he hurled the wooden stick, nailing Aloy right in the forehead. Out cold, Ulwa crashed straight to the ground. You guys saw that, right? Chris looked down, telling him not to expect anyone to wait for his spell. That is true trash-tier behavior. Aloy's half-finished summon fizzled out completely. Later, Chris was casually gambling when his servant nervously asked if he was really sure he could pull this off. To which he casually replied they had plenty of time, so he should rest while possible. However, his servant pointed out that he wasn't exactly resting right now. Annoyed, the main character demanded to know what was wrong with a slacker doing slacker things, asking Marie to back him up. Laughing, she agreed, assuring the staff everything was completely fine. As long as Chris avoided alcohol, she handed him ginger ale, frustrating him immediately. Because he wanted the hard stuff. Meanwhile, Aloy's butler kept a super close watch from the sidelines, completely baffled why Ulwa wanted this total loser monitored. Chris then invited Aloy's butlers to join their table, mentioning he was pretty confident their master wouldn't be waking up until tomorrow morning anyway. Since he beat him to a pulp, he winked, promising to keep their secret if they joined. Which pissed the butlers off even more. They snapped back, refusing to join, telling him to mind his own business. Playfully agreeing, he told them to have fun watching him. Several hours later, around sunset, he happily yelled at his crew to deal cards and drink his alcohol share. His servant promised no holding back. Hours vanished, leaving a dark sky. Aloy's butlers watched in disgust as Chris and his crew passed out on the table, totally wasted. Making them think keeping watch was totally pointless now, so they decided to head back and give a quick report. The second those butlers left, he instantly woke up. Sitting straight up, he peeked out the window, making sure the coast was completely clear. Annoyed it got late, he knew it was time to move. Handing his jacket to Marie, he pulled an outer coat from his bag, telling her he had a quick solo errand and not to follow. Moments later, on Mount Keton, he looked around, absolutely amazed by Count Tim's secret territory. The demonic beast energy here was crazy dense, totally living up to its dark reputation. Trust me, you'll love this. He walked calmly, knowing home base was close. All right, stick with me, we are diving back in. He checks the estate grounds, shocked to spot only 2 guards. Then he slowly turns invisible, super stoked he learned Marie's cloaking spell. Remembering when he literally begged Marie to teach him, he casually strolls right past those clueless guards and slips completely unnoticed into the property. Minutes later, he spots a huge stage and sprints over, wondering if this creepy setup is the actual altar for the Black Pill finals. Because yeah, it looks totally sinister. Then it hits him. His old buddy once said to score a black pill, you gotta offer up a Karajov beast and literally take its life. Basically, he needed to terrify this monster so badly that it actually wanted to die. His friend also claimed that total opposites are connected. Intense fear and absolute joy sit on the exact same spectrum, so. In that split second, the useless ash pill is reborn as the ultimate black pill. Thus, Count Timon's family, famous for dominating demonic beasts through pure terror, totally dominates the black pill industry. Smiling at the memory, he finally understood. Just like Lena said, he was planning to steal the Timon's ultimate technique, slip the Karajov a crazy aphrodisiac cocktail, let it rampage, and hoard every single black pill. But honestly, there was literally zero time to copy and learn their entire technique, so he definitely needed another plan. Out of nowhere, a massive spike of magical energy hits his back. He immediately spins around, wondering who the heck is there. Hearing a weird noise nearby, he quickly jumps up, turns toward the sound, and dashes over at top speed. He spots a nearby cave and is completely shocked. Stepping inside super carefully, he instantly smells pure malice and notices a dark magic barrier lurking inside. Now pay attention, this is wild. Chris absolutely cannot believe there is an actual rift connecting straight to Gehenna, the literal demon world, sitting right here. Boom, lightbulb moment. What if he lures the Karajov right into this exact spot using that aphrodisiac? Gripping the potion tight, he gets super hyped for the hunt. He struts out of the cave, totally missing the red bat watching from the center. The bat spreads its massive wings, and Simon shifts right back into human form. Simon seriously did not expect this sneaky little dude to be so entertaining. He saw him completely embarrass that brat from the Timon family, but also trick everyone into dropping their guard by acting completely useless, sneaking into forbidden zones like a ghost, clearly plotting something absolutely massive. Chris's wild antics make Simon dangerously excited to pull an even more messed up prank. Simon steps right up to the rift, shoving his hand inside until it actively bleeds. His crimson blood drips right onto the magic floor barrier, melting it away into thick smoke, while an eerie voice calls out to Simon, asking for his ultimate wish. Simon just flashes a wicked, hyped-up smile. Next morning, Awa proudly slams the flagpole straight into the dirt alongside his loyal servants and Chris. But of course, Chris immediately speaks up, mockingly asking if Awa thinks he looks cool for a guy who literally just got wrecked by him. Awa absolutely loses it, screaming at the loser to shut his mouth. Awa fires back, demanding why he brought a grenade if he cannot even use the thing. Chris just smirks, claiming it is way more effective than some dumb club. Then he offers to let Awa test it out, instantly making the guy shake in pure terror. Awa quickly deflects, barking orders to lure the Karajov out, and they agree. Next, Awa commands his elite demon guards to shadow him, since they will be taking positions right beside the altar, to which they instantly agree. Right then, Chris spots the creepy red bat hanging up in the branches above them, but before he can even blink, Awa snaps at him to respond, getting a super sarcastic yes in return. Hitting the altar, a guard rudely tells Chris to back off, calling him completely useless for the hunt. Chris fires back, totally fine hanging in the back, but aggressively warns the guard not to come crying for help when this entire plan goes horribly wrong. That makes the guard absolutely rage, calling him a total idiot. But Awa quickly steps in, telling his guy not to waste precious energy before the real hunt actually starts. Turning back, Awa labels Chris dead weight and orders him to just stand there guarding the flag. Chris hits him with another deeply sarcastic yes, mocking that the useless guy will bravely protect their little flag, leaning back against a massive tree. You and I both know exactly what is coming next. He casually watches them try their absolute best, fully knowing they are walking straight into his trap, double-checking the dagger, and ash pill the poor guy handed over. Suddenly, a massive thud echoes out, and Chris knows it has finally arrived. A Karajov, a terrifying four-legged magic demon beast, gets violently dragged toward the altar, looking at the monster with surprising fondness. He genuinely wonders why this thing looks so incredibly goofy. Meanwhile, the guard checks if Alwa is ready, telling him to fire up the big subjugation art. Stepping right up to the plate, Alwa flexes by activating his shiny subjugation magic circle. He starts chanting his spell while the screaming shepherds struggle to hold the Karajov down. But wait, the Karajov gets one sniff of that aphrodisiac potion on the ground and goes instantly crazy. Losing its mind, the beast totally stuns Alwa. Before the dude can even blink, the Karajov violently shoves him back. The guard frantically sprints over to check on Alwa while the giant monster rampages. It blasts a huge cloud of poison, forcing the panicked shepherds into a defensive line. Chris literally watches them pour everything into shielding Alwa from the beast's relentless attacks, knowing their efforts are totally useless since that spiked potion has the Karajov completely unhinged. Alwa knew his guys popped an antidote earlier, but if this drag-out fight continues, they are absolutely in massive danger. The loyal servants immediately cover their faces to dodge the toxic air, desperately using every ounce of their remaining strength to block the Karajov. But it is just way too strong, easily tossing them aside like ragdolls. The massive beast then tilts its head, locking its deadly sights right onto Alwa. But get this, someone blocks the monster just in time, leaving Alwa absolutely stunned to see Chris holding back the Karajov with his grenade. "Trust me, we are stopping here." "Stick with me here." Chris calls Count Tim's house totally pathetic, forcing the flagbearer to step in. He smirks, offering a rescue if Alwa calls him little bro. Alwa calls him crazy, asking why. Chris just shoots the question right back. He asks what his plan is, reminding him they don't have all day. Alwa stares at his servants. Struggling to breathe from the poison. Trembling, he grits his teeth. Furious, he calls Chris a jerk but begs for help. Chris agrees, reminding him to keep that promise. He shoves the Karajov's head aside with a grenade and starts casting the subjugation art spell. Magic chains shoot out, tightly wrapping around the beast's head and its body. Alwa is totally shocked seeing him use subjugation art. Chris just calls him a peasant for being surprised, asking if he thought only they could use it. He knows that since it's not some secret technique, an intermediate subjugation art really isn't a big deal at all. He yanks the chain hard, holding it firm. Then he leaps behind the Karajov, pulling the chain up over its head to spin it completely around. He controls the monster to run that way, making Alwa scream in absolute panic. He yells at him to stop since they are heading for the rift, but Chris just smirks arrogantly and keeps charging forward. Now pay attention here. Minutes later, they reach the cave. Chris stops the Karajov, which sees the dark magic barrier and screams in pure terror. But Chris calmly asks if it is the beast's first time seeing Gina's malice. He mockingly tells it to embrace the overwhelming pain and fear. The Karajov stops screaming as its eyes form a black pill. Chris instantly pulls his dagger and stabs straight into the monster's eye. He starts cutting into its head to extract the eye. Moments later, Alwa and the crew arrive, worriedly asking if Chris is okay. Alwa warns that this cave is crazy dangerous and they need to bounce fast. But Chris tells him to stop being a coward, asking what they should do next. He shows them the pill, revealing it is an ash pill. Not a black pill, shocking everyone. Alwa bites his lip in frustration, and his servant frantically asks what they should do with it. Screaming that if Alwa had not intervened, this would never have happened. But Alwa orders them to drop it. He shyly thanks Chris for saving his guys, admitting they escaped without major injuries, all thanks to him. This totally surprises Chris, coming from Alwa. He feels a bit guilty, and even worse knowing he secretly swapped out the real black pill. But he reminds himself he gotta do what it takes. Mockingly, he tells Alwa to call him big bro like promised, leaving Alwa in absolute shock. Chris asks if he is breaking his word. Alwa snaps back that he never made a promise and is literally 2 years older. Suddenly, the cave shakes violently, releasing an intense force. The servants collapse to the ground, completely unable to handle the crazy pressure. But Alwa and Chris stay standing. Alwa asks what is happening. "You and I both know this means trouble." Chris turns around. A massive demon with glowing blue eyes glares at them, utterly terrifying him. The demon says it has been a while since seeing a toy. Chris instantly knows it is Gina's demon. Alwa stutters, stepping right in front. He tells him to run and save himself since he's an outsider. Chris just stays silent, spotting that exact same bat nearby. He spins the dagger in his hand and perfectly chucks it right at the bat. Direct hit. But it turns to ash, returning to a shocked Simon watching through the portal. Simon wonders when Chris noticed him, thinking he could stall the demon. But now that his teleportation bat clone is gone, it will take him at least 5 whole minutes to get there. Even pushing his blood magic to the max, Simon knows arriving late means everyone dies. So he instantly rushes toward the cave at absolute full speed. Meanwhile, the demon calls Chris interesting, asking what he is plotting. Chris just smiles, saying he really hates it when someone tries to spy on him. This makes the demon laugh, mocking that he sure has lots of worries for a dead man. Chris eyes the four-armed demon, figuring out that compared to the ones he fought during the Destruction era, this guy is low tier. Still, it is at least a 5-star threat. Definitely not someone to fight head-on right now, but he raises a finger, spreading sleepy smoke. This instantly knocks Ulwa's guards into a super deep sleep. Ulwa screams, asking what he is doing and why he put them under when they need to fight together. Chris sighs, frustrated that Ulwa has crazy high magic resistance. So he just punches him hard in the gut, telling him to shut up and sleep. Ulwa instantly collapses to the floor, knocked out completely. The demon gets confused, asking if he plans to offer the others up as living sacrifices. The demon offers to spare Chris and bless him in exchange for the humans, but Chris says he talks way too much and unpins a grenade. He aims it, declaring his rule is to never team up with demons. The demon recognizes the grenade, gathering raw magic power. It tells him the idea is cute, but a holy sword he cannot use is just a piece of useless trash. The demon blasts its magic. Chris blocks with a grenade, getting slammed into the wall. That's where we leave it, trust me, you need to see what's next. You and I are jumping right into the madness. The demon grabs Chris, offering to spare his pathetic life for a deal. Chris just spits directly in its face, making it absolutely furious. Smirking, Chris asks whoever said he couldn't use the holy sword. He swings the holy grenade right at the demon's hand, completely breaking free. He freefalls through the air, hitting a smooth roll on the landing. Then he unleashes his light magic, triggering the grenade's holy power. The demon is totally shocked. It demands to know how a fellow demon like him could possibly use the holy power of light. But Chris just throws it right back, asking if the monster finally feels like its life is in danger. Boiling with rage, the demon claps its hands together, gathering way more magic power while screaming that it will slaughter him. Then, it unleashes a massive, supercharged attack straight at our boy Chris. But Chris stays totally calm and activates the Dead Sea splitting light technique. A blinding, epic slash of light cuts right through the dark magic, rocketing straight at the beast. The demon literally cannot believe its eyes as the light cleanly slices it in half, an instant kill. Chris, panting heavy, watches his breath fog up as everything around him gets blurry. Realizing he pushed his body way past its limits, he collapses to the ground, slowly blacking out. While fading out, he remembers Evan's shocked voice asking if he really saw the Dead Sea splitting light and actually managed to copy it. He replied it was something like that and showed it off. Evan just shook his head in disbelief, saying Chris was really something. He explained the Dead Sea splitting light literally represents the massive flash that parts the Dead Sea. But ironically, even with that insane sword technique, poor Evan had completely failed to become the guiding light of the Mer clan. He then told Chris he would surely be the light to save the world. A gentle being touches Chris's head, thinking he was interesting. Now pay close attention here. She introduces herself as Mafina, a first seed of Gina's 7th realm. Meanwhile, Timon's followers finally arrive for the rescue. Chris lets his eyes finally close as Mafina whispers that she is eagerly looking forward to his future moves. Days later, at the Timon mansion, he wakes up in his room with a splitting headache, shocked he had been knocked out for 2 whole days. Checking his body, he realizes he's totally fine. Then he suddenly remembers the black pill. He snatches the pouch from his nightstand and breathes a massive sigh of relief, seeing the black pill safely inside. Remembering Mafina, he groans, realizing he just attracted some seriously unwanted attention. He knows that occasionally powerful demons will bless early overachievers so they can cultivate super fast, but he wonders why he should even care, since that's usually a perk strictly meant for the bad guys. Plus, he figures a demon from the 7th world wouldn't even be that high level anyway. A knock hits the door, and Count Timon, the house patriarch, walks in alongside Lois. The Count mentions hearing he was awake and asks how his body feels. Chris immediately jumps out of bed to greet the Count respectfully, but Count Timon waves it off, saying it is totally fine. Telling him not to stand up and just listen, Chris sits back down, and the Count informs him that they sent an investigation squad to check the cave. Yesterday, they discovered someone tampered with the magic circle sealing the entrance. Luckily, it seemed the demonic offspring got hit with a reverse summon, but no matter how insanely brief that crazy moment was, it was more than enough time for everyone to die. We both know the truth, right? Chris just nods, wondering if they actually bought that reverse summon story. He figures it makes total sense. It'd be way too hard for them to believe he soloed the demon. Since he doesn't need to invent an excuse, it's a huge win. Count Timon then says he will start with an apology. He apologizes for treating him so badly based on stupid rumors that he was useless. He respectfully thanks Chris as a house benefactor, which completely shocks him. Playing it cool, he tells the Count that as a dark magic clan member, he simply did what he had to do. After all, they were family, but the hilarious truth, he only stirred the pot, ignoring his guilty conscience, because if he couldn't get the black pill legit, he planned to steal it. The Count freezes for a second, totally moved by the word family. He tells Chris that if there is anything he needs help with, he should just say it. Unless it was totally impossible, he'd make it happen. Chris replies that in that case, he hopes the Timon house drops its old beef with the Khazar house, absolutely stunning the Count. He adds that instead of acting like enemies, constantly at each other's throats, he wishes they could build a friendly but competitive rivalry, working together to plan some actual, solid progress. Something that actually matches the fact that they are blood relatives. Count Timon definitely hesitates to agree. But Chris tells him he surely knows the real reason their two houses are fighting, straight up behind-the-scenes manipulation by the main clan. If the branch families actually worked together, the main clan would start feeling seriously threatened. It was a dirty setup to keep them acting as simple guard dogs. Count Timon asks if he is suggesting a full-on revolt. But Chris calmly replies he has zero thoughts of a rebellion. He simply believes they shouldn't be dragged down by the main clan's massive mistakes. Count Timon is deeply moved, amazed Chris is thinking so far ahead. Thanking him for the praise, Chris asks if he accepts the request. The Count sighs heavily, replying that for the first time in forever, he really needs to contact that brat Reborn. This makes Chris smile, knowing that if they can finally unite their forces like this, they can build a solid front during the era of destruction. That's where we leave it for now. The Count then smacks Ulwa, asking what he's staring at. All right, stick with me here. Ulwa clears his throat and awkwardly hands over the ash pill, mumbling about checking the cave. He says it was just lying there on the dirt, and since Chris was totally knocked out, he picked it up. Chris takes it but totally roasts him, joking that if Ulwa is feeling that grateful, he should just hand over more free stuff, which obviously instantly ticks the guy off. Count Tim spots them bickering and steps right in, telling Chris that exactly as promised. He's super grateful and has a gift. The Count tosses him a summoning stone that can hold up to a rank 4 demon beast. Chris is stunned. That item is ridiculously rare, but the Count isn't done yet, casually dropping the news that he's writing a recommendation so Chris can actually join the sacred dark magic rite. They wish each other luck, and Chris genuinely thanks him for the huge hookup. Count Tim turns around and drags Ulwa out so Chris can finally rest. Chris gives a soft smile, waiting until the coast is completely clear. Then he asks the empty room why they're hiding. Boom, a dark red shadow steps right out of the curtains. Simon reveals himself, smirking that Chris spotting him definitely wasn't a lucky guess. He can't believe Chris saw through stealth that even Count Tim missed. Chris just shrugs it off, saying he could literally smell the blood. Simon gives a polite bow, introducing himself as the Dark Magic Clan's butler. Chris immediately puts the pieces together, wondering if this means Simon is the Elder Chief's right-hand man, and why that name sounds so familiar. Then his fist clenches hard as reality hits him. Now watch closely because this guy, he's the literal leader of the Blood Shadow Mages. Those guys don't care about the Magic Empire or the Light Domain. They're a completely psycho squad obsessed with mass destruction and chaos. And their boss, a total monster, who hit 8 stars of power, and during the era of destruction, maxed out at 9 stars to become the 10th Demon King. Chris can't even count how many times this guy almost killed them. Now, Simon is right here. The actual demon king of carnage in the flesh. Simon then says he never expected the young master to be this incredible. Especially for taking out a demon solo. Chris freezes up, totally shocked. How on earth does Simon know about that? He made sure to destroy the clone. Did Simon see the Dead Sea's light? Playing it safe, Chris lies and says he has zero clue what he's talking about. Simon knows he's playing dumb. He explains that when he checked the cave, the Demon King's body was just completely wiped out. Not a single trace left behind. It definitely wasn't a reverse summon and pulling off a total vaporization inside that cave. He's seriously impressed by those skills, which catches Chris off guard. Simon then asks if he could just explain exactly how he pulled it off, adding that whatever he says goes straight to the Elder Chief as an evaluation. But Chris shoots back that he doesn't need to show his trump card. Simon is super confused, repeating it goes straight to the Elder. You and I both know Chris is too smart for that. He tells Simon a real leader wants a predator hiding its claws, not some nerd answering every single question. That totally stuns Simon. Grinning, he admits Chris is a seriously interesting guy. But Chris just bluntly asks if he's going to apologize. Simon blanks, asking why he should apologize. Chris points out it's usually super hard to tell a reverse summon from total annihilation using just leftovers. That's why Count Timon completely misunderstood the situation. However, Chris knew it was an absolute wipeout, and his reasoning for that was pretty simple. He puts it together, points right at Simon, and drops the bomb. Simon was the actual summoner. He calls him out for summoning a demon spawn that almost killed a clan member. Imagine what the Elder Chief would do if he found out Simon caused this whole mess. Totally busted, Simon sighs and agrees to take full responsibility for it. But Chris says they're keeping it a secret, throwing Simon off. Chris just smirks, reminding him that Simon owes him a massive favor now. Simon asks if that's a deal. Chris says that works perfectly. Laughing, Simon says he gets it. Fading back into stealth mode, he promises he won't forget this mercy. He adds it was awesome meeting him today. And he'll literally be counting the days until Chris finally shows up at the main clan. Then, he vanishes. Chris knows Simon becomes a massive player during the era of destruction, so building this connection is an absolute must to change the future. Next morning, luggage is just floating everywhere while he fixes his tie. Marie, who's controlling all the bags with magic, tells him she's done prepping for the trip home, and he gives her props. Then, a quick knock on the door. It's Alwa asking if he's leaving, but Chris just demands he use his proper title, totally stunning him. He reminds Alwa he gave him a pass yesterday. But a bet is a bet. From now on, he has to call him Big Brother, which absolutely makes Alwa furious. Alwa yells that he's literally 2 years older. Chris casually asks what else he wants. Alwa admits he came to warn him. He says that since Chris called them all family earlier, he felt like it was totally wrong to keep a secret from family. So where does that leave us? Alwa warns him to watch his back, because Loin is completely dead set against Chris joining that sacred dark magic rite. Alright, let us dive right in. Aloy asked if Chris actually knew about the huge power gap between 2-star ranks. The main family and the branch families were not playing on the same field. He explained that the main family hoarded the biggest elixirs and the most broken techniques. The dark magic blessings and the starting line for direct descendants were miles ahead of where the branch families even got to start. That meant Chris was supposed to be easy prey, but Chris just smirked and clapped back with a warning. He straight up told Alwa to skip the upcoming sacred dark magic rite. He said it was for his own good, which left Alwa totally stunned. Furious, Alwa yelled that even if Chris was worried, there was no way he would let him hog all the pure dark energy. But Chris confidently fired back, telling him to remember that no matter who his opponent was, they would absolutely regret facing him in the sacred rite. Angry, Alwa called him an arrogant brat, but Chris totally ignored him and told Marie it was time to bounce. Then he teasingly patted Alwa on the back, telling him to think real hard about that warning before regretting it. Later, arriving at Count Khazar's massive estate, Tor is super surprised that his brother went straight to training after coming back. Apparently, Chris just wants to be totally alone until the dark ceremony ritual begins. Tor ends up chasing him down, still using that ridiculously long title. He wants to challenge him to a duel to fulfill their promise. Chris is honestly impressed by his brother's steady progress in hitting the mid 2-star level. And even though he really wants to skip the duel and keep training, he remembers that his brother is also competing in the dark rite ritual. He suggests putting the duel on hold until the end of his training session, promising Tour he will not delay it any further. Accepting the deal, the younger brother leaves a super stubborn impression. That stubbornness reminds Chris of a certain guy from his past life. Now watch closely, sitting alone, he realizes he has a full month before the ritual. So he bites into the ebony orb, wincing at the nasty bitter taste as he crashes onto his bed. Its dark energy is even more chaotic than he imagined. But to his absolute shock, he also senses a wild flash of light energy inside the orb. He wonders if the raw emotions of the Carso beast left a lasting mark on it, suddenly realizing why demons have such a brutal time absorbing it. Even so, he does not care as long as he can fuse with the light force. Normally, demons just waste this specific kind of energy. But he has zero intention of passing up such an epic resource. Finally, he absorbs all the energy into his light core, the power completely rewiring his very senses. Chris squeezes his eyes shut, signaling that the insane process is complete. The scene quickly cuts over to Lady Dolene, who gets a detailed report on the Ebony Hunt's investigation from her loyal servant. She has been keeping a very close eye on Chris, who somehow survived a crazy demon encounter during the wild hunting event. Half a month after the Turaman disaster, Tour bursts right into his older brother's room for their promised duel. The second the little bro stepped in, he noticed a massive, scary shift in his brother's aura. Chris was honestly pretty amused that young Tour showed up so early in the morning just to get a quick beatdown. The little brother was totally speechless. Chris's aura is light years beyond what it was. I know what you are thinking, Tour is about to get wrecked. Since he is desperate for a beatdown, wish granted. But they will only fight if Tour agrees to drop out of the upcoming Sacred Dark Rite if he loses. This rite is a brutal contest. The weak should just stay away. Completely insulted at being called weak, Tour draws his sword, since the little bro is blind to his brother's genuine concern. Chris will just have to beat the lesson into him until it clicks. Tour charges in with total confidence, only to get thrashed so brutally, he ends up bedridden. The healers order bed rest for half a month, which effectively kicks him out of this year's rite. Chris asked his dad for some alone time with Tour, and the Count cleared the room for a real brotherly chat. Right now, Tour is actually pouting like a spoiled baby, even though he was the one begging for this fight. He asks why an older brother would hate seeing his little brother level up. From his perspective, Chris always mocks and looks down on his achievements. Now he crossed the line, deliberately injuring him enough to disqualify him from the Sacred Dark Rite. Chris can clearly see his little brother is about to cry. So he clears the air, saying they are totally out of sync. He was only harsh on Tour, hoping to massively speed up his growth. Competing against him in the rite this year would be a totally brainless move. He would just permanently lose the chance to grab pure dark energy. Chris had to be brutal and decisive because the kid is unbelievably stubborn. But the craziest part, pure dark energy does not even suit Tour at all. He is actually a way better match for gray dark energy. Just like light power splits into different types, dark power also comes in a bunch of different variants. Naturally, pure dark energy is widely hyped up as the absolute highest form and attribute. Right below that top tier sits the gray dark energy, a unique type perfectly meant for cultivating curse magic. Tour should have leveled up enough by now to literally notice that. He makes way faster progress in curse magic than in sword fighting. Since Chris cannot exactly admit he saw him become a legendary curse mage in the future, the older brother had to cook up a decent excuse. He claimed he could spot his brother's elemental affinity by fighting him, since he was also going all out. Either way, absorbing pure dark energy before completely mastering the gray kind would only wreck him in the long run. Sure, eating up a higher attribute has some epic perks, but in Tour's specific case, its unique traits would seriously tank his progress. So what do you and I make of this? Skipping this year's rite was an absolute genius play. Let's dive right into this wild family drama. Chris gives genuine big brother advice, hyping his little bro's success. Tour feels it deep down, pulling something straight out of his pocket. Chris hands his little brother an ash pill as a gift. Now these ash pills, absolutely insane value, super rare. But Chris actually got scammed by a total fraud, so whatever. Plus, he had already eaten something way better than a basic little ash pill anyway. Tor is totally moved by his brother's words and actions. He realizes he was completely wrong for thinking Chris was just being a massive jerk. Still, if the guy could change for the better, why did he act like such a complete idiot before, even when their mom was literally on her deathbed? She had to deal with so much heartbreak. Even though Chris wasn't controlling this body back then, the guilt hits him hard. He was just a different person who didn't get it. A few days later, the dear family cathedral is absolutely packed with noise and super flashy carriages. Stepping out of one is our boy, Chris Baron Kazar. It was a massive trip, and he desperately needs a good stretch. He knows the main family didn't even bother opening a teleport portal out of pure spite. Oh, but when he becomes the head of this clan, those miserable old guys are going to pay big time. Since they finally arrived, Marie pops out freely, already daydreaming about a cute date with their hearts racing. Even though she doesn't actually have a heart, since the main family rule says only 1+1 allowed. Chris has to bring Marilla since they are bound by a pact. The second he steps out, he becomes the absolute talk of the town, whispers everywhere. Marie praises his fame, but it honestly sounds like pure sarcasm. Every dark right candidate is completely shook when the useless Kazar bastard gets personally greeted by the head butler. Simon checks him out from head to toe, genuinely surprised by his massive glow-up in such a ridiculously short time. The vampire servant announces he was sent on direct orders from the elder clan leader himself. His old master wants to personally meet this demon, everyone keeps hyping up. Simon instantly notices Chris isn't even slightly surprised by the summon. So his very first stop is the elder leader's private study room, and standing right beside the old man is Aunt Mario. Now pay attention here, you really cannot underestimate these two heavyweights. The second the elder's eyes lock onto him, Chris feels this crazy suffocating pressure. He can barely stand the weight, feeling like an ant getting squashed by a literal god. The elder clan leader is straight up flexing, pushing out massive waves of dark energy on purpose, knowing a rookie like Chris should instantly crack. But our boy, far from a basic rookie. He might shake, but he won't fall, gritting his teeth against the insane pressure. He throws a formal bow to Duke Baron, the big boss of the dark magic clan, when asked if the sudden invite totally shocked him. Chris honestly replies he saw it coming. He knows the top dogs simply cannot ignore a rising superstar. The elder boss absolutely loves that cocky answer. Mario and Simon cannot even hold back, totally hyping the kid up. But the old man, he isn't fully sold just yet. At his age, he thinks only time decides if a legendary seed withers or blooms. Who knows? Chris might just be a tiny sprout dying the second it hits dirt. Chris does not argue with the boomer logic about keeping expectations low, but smoothly adds, he might just be the sprout that totally shatters everyone's expectations. Growing into an absolute beast of a tree, maybe an anomaly that straight up shadows even the biggest trees out there. At the bare minimum, he promises the old man won't be disappointed. After a tense beat, the elder smiles, tossing his hopes right onto Chris. Dismissed, our guy gives one last respectful bow, the absolute second he leaves the room. Aunt Maria immediately asks the elder for his real thoughts on the kid. The old boss admits Chris totally blasted past his initial expectations. But here is what you and I need to watch. He fears talent that big means a super violent path, especially with a bloody war brewing in the magic empire. Still, a tiny spark of hope sparked in that room today, and honestly, that's one of the few things keeping the old man's heart pumping. This Kazar kid might actually pull off the old guy's lifelong dream. Night finally drops, kicking off the wild banquet for the sacred Dark Rites Eve. The servants loudly announce the arrival of Count Kazar's oldest son and Chris Baron Kazar, who struts in completely, dripping with elegance like absolute royalty. The hottest gossip right now is all about the useless fool meeting the elder clan leader earlier today. Some haters literally suspect he's just some sort of boy toy, instead of raging. He takes the nasty rumors as a massive compliment to his looks. Marie feeding his ego definitely does not help. First thing Chris spots, servants handing out drinks. Finally, some real booze instead of that weak juice from back home. Sadly, these servers are super strict and straight up ban underage drinking here. Which is hilarious, since half these kids have probably murdered someone. no booze means he has to settle for another boring ginger ale. What is even the point of hanging out? Everyone here is just a massive buzzkill obsessed with the rules. Chris is practically dying of boredom. But suddenly, all eyes snap to the doors as the next VIP crew rolls in, the clan's young lords and ladies. The moment the doors swing wide, pure elite aura floods the room. 4 kids decked out in crazy expensive gear make the entire banquet hall freeze in total awe. Leading the squad is Echtaran, the second young lord. Right behind him is Julian Daran, the first young lady. Next is Jupan Daran, the second young lady. And finally the third young lord, Emzak Baron. Some hidden factions are super salty the first young lord didn't show. But trust me, you're going to love this part. Our boy Chris is totally locked onto Skit, ready to confront the guy who ruined his rep in court. Alright, stick with me. Eshit did the absolute worst thing imaginable. He totally ignored Chris, walking right past him like thin air. The jerk didn't even glance his way. It just goes to show this top succession candidate treats our boy like a literal bug. Then the first young lady, Jolien, strolled by. Her eyes stayed locked on Chris for way longer than totally necessary. Aunt Marion once gave him a super cryptic warning about this woman. Honestly though, he didn't sense anything crazy yet. We'll figure her out later. That is enough enemy scouting for one day. Just as he was heading back to prep for tomorrow's massive trial, a butler rolled up. He introduced himself as Four, a summoner working for young Master Amalo Loyan. Hearing that rich kid's name instantly soured Chris's mood. He asked what was up. This butler actually had the nerve to claim someone unworthy sneaked into tomorrow's sacred dark rite. He acted worried an unqualified bum might cause an accident. Dragging down the Great Dark Clan's name, it is super obvious this old geezer is calling Chris a total fraud. When called out, Ford did not even deny it. Standing right above him on a balcony was his master. That curly-haired punk, trying to get a reaction. Chris hates this weak bullying style. If you are gonna start something, do it yourself. Whatever, he will give him a painful reality check during tomorrow's rite. Anyway. Now watch this closely, because things get wild. Chris decides to mess with this cocky summoner without even drawing a single weapon. He totally baits Four into showing off those little party tricks he calls summons. He doesn't even need a staff for this absolute clown. As the tension spiked, everyone in the banquet hall totally locked onto the drama. The loud commotion even made the first young lady crack a super weird smile. Just seconds later, the guest's jaws literally dropped at the insane scene. Four was on his knees, desperately shielding himself from his own evil spirits. Meanwhile, Chris was literally using one spirit as a chair, and 2 others as servants. Everyone was absolutely speechless. Summoner 4 had launched a dirty sneak attack with his dark spirits. But instead of shredding their target, the spirits instantly turned on him with one flick of Chris's wrist. He stole control so fast it looked like a literal cheat code. He even felt young Master Loyan trying to interfere, but whatever. The curly-haired brat looked ready to explode from sheer embarrassment. What a pathetic air. This absolute loser should have just challenged him man to man. Shameless as always. Loyan loudly claimed he had absolutely nothing to do with the attack. Nobody bought that garbage, while his servant begged for help on the floor. Totally over this clown show, Chris walked off. He will see these scrubs tomorrow at the sacred dark rite and teach that coward some manners. Boom, the day of the sacred dark rite finally arrived. Every candidate looked insanely nervous. Well, except Chris. He honestly looked like he woke up on the wrong side of the bed. Among the crowd was Aloy Sturman. Chris told this dude to skip it, but he is super stubborn. Can't blame him though, entering this trial is a massive honor. You just don't pass that up. Finally, the last guy showed up. That curly-haired punk Loyan strutted in acting tough. Chris was absolutely dying to humble him. With everyone gathered, this short guy named Sebastian, the main estate's vice butler, welcomed the crew. He was their guide to the sacred grounds for the trial today. He smacked his cane on the floor. The space instantly shattered, revealing an endless staircase plunging into pure darkness. I know what you're thinking, an underground test. Nope. It is actually just a super advanced illusion art creating fake space. Chris was the only one who noticed. Sebastian silently walked down the stairs like it was a total breeze. Everyone scrambled after him. After a drop that felt like forever, they popped into an endless looping illusion hall. Sebastian was still chilling up front at a fast walk. The candidates were trying hard, but most were totally gassed out already. This underground zone was crazy weird. They had to climb steep hills and navigate twisted paths. Even Loyan, the so-called favorite, was struggling hard. Making it worse, Sebastian, the examiner, looked like he could walk literally forever. Dialing up the nightmare, he announced the floor would collapse under anyone lagging behind. Instantly, 2 guys in the back fell into the absolute void as the floor vanished. The rest, terrified and exhausted, didn't even have time to panic because Sebastian hit the gas instead of a light jog. His little legs kicked into an all-out sprint. Soon, the number of people keeping up started dropping fast. Loyan glanced back, mocking the weaklings who couldn't hang with the big dogs, but then he freaked out seeing Chris completely locked in. This absolute monster wasn't even sweating a single drop, while everyone else was running on pure fumes and willpower. Hitting the final stretch, Chris decided to totally troll Loyan, calling him a loud dog with absolutely zero bite. Trust me, you and I are gonna love this. As a direct heir, Loyan should be doing way better than just gasping for air. Alright, stick with me here. Chris was spoon-fed massive resources from day one. In his eyes, these kids are complete idiots, torturing their bodies for absolutely no reason just because they refuse to use their brains. Taking a run inside an illusion space. Literally the dumbest move ever. While everyone else suffers through deadly cardio, his stamina hasn't dropped a single bit. He just tweaked one spell, making himself practically invincible here. Sebastian definitely noticed the only guy who understood this whole elimination process. Looks like the bosses already dropped hints about the young master of the Khazar family. Finally, the 4 survivors hit the finish line. 3 are gasping while Chris chills like a boss. Ulwa couldn't understand surviving that hellish march spotless. Chris just mocked him, saying he should work out more. Suddenly, a glowing light and creepy voice grabbed everyone's attention. This sacred ground apparently holds pure dark energy, making it the literal sacred darkness. The light morphed into a disturbing woman that some fans would instantly call mommy. Meet Ryu, the sacred grounds manager. Today, these young nobles will try securing that great pure darkness. Just like the 3rd-ranked Demon King, the Dark Magic Clan's progenitor once did. Raising her hand, Ryu traced wavy light patterns across the floor. Since darkness isn't enough for 4, their worth will be tested by the demonic beasts waiting on each separate path. Long story short. Now pay attention. They take random paths and whoever finishes first claims the ultimate prize, meaning unforeseen accidents between rivals might happen. Ryu explained that fighting doesn't equal an instant disqualification, since everyone takes a different route. Clashing is super unlikely. If a fight happens, going all out is a terrible idea. Wasting time brawling just gives the other guys a massive advantage. Ryu's final tip for success: focus on surviving, after a quick 5-second countdown. She wished them luck and started the race. Sebastian turned around to bet blood juice on the winner. But Ryu was already completely gone. The usually chill vice butler absolutely lost his mind. On one path, Loyan finally found his first beast horde, a pack of 4-eyed, fire-spitting wolves. They howled and rushed the curly-haired fool. Coating his hand in dark energy, he charged head-on. In mere seconds, he unleashed a crazy combo, striking every single wolf's fatal point and wiping them all out with one hit. He correctly guessed those pups were low 2-star magic beasts at best, literally just cannon fodder against a high 2-star demon like him. Right now, he's way more interested in picturing Chris suffering on whatever path he took. By the rules, every path should be the exact same distance and difficulty for fairness. But you saw this coming, right? He bribed a mage to pack Chris's path with stronger beasts. His deadly fate would look like a total accident, since any death during the sacred dark rite is basically just written off as unavoidable. Loyan's plan seemed completely foolproof. A few minutes later, he strolled up to the sacred grounds gate. Seeing nobody around, he started celebrating, completely oblivious that someone else was already chilling by the door. Chris had been resting there forever. He waited forever for Loyan and got bored. Confident his trap worked, Loyan was completely confused. He accidentally blurted out that Chris's path should have been swarming with way stronger monsters. Loyan really is just an idiot who can't even keep his own plot secret. Chris already suspected someone rigged his trial's difficulty. So hearing the culprit confess directly was super satisfying. Loin tried acting arrogant like a typical main family member. But that attitude won't fly here, he whined, claiming that fighting other competitors during the rite is taboo, while secretly charging his fists with dark energy, trying to play dirty. He lunged forward, throwing a massive right hook. Chris leaned back, easily dodging it. Without looking away, he studied the idiot's magic combat art. He noticed it explodes massive magic power at point-blank range. Perfect for dislocating joints, after missing that first strike. Loin started throwing wild, lightning-fast punches. He's maxing his attack rate, but Chris dodges perfectly like a sneaky rat. Finally, Chris seemingly dropped his guard, exposing an opening. Like a total amateur, Loin took the bait. Closing in, Chris happily taunted him. Fooled by the fake opening, Loin walked right into a brutal armlock. Using the arrogant kid's own momentum against him, Chris started cranking the pressure on that arm. Smirking, he warned Loin to hold back his screams. The next few minutes were pure, hellish agony. He cranked the armlock until a brutal crunch echoed out. Outside the sacred dark ground, a gut-wrenching scream rang out. Hours later. And that's where we leave it today. The last finalist arrived completely exhausted from endless monster waves. It was none other than Alwa. Alright, stick with me here. Chris is chilling at the finish line, totally bored, with the survivors knocked out cold at his feet. Chris was super annoyed that Alwa was moving so slow, since they already knew each other. He gave the guy a choice, pass out on your own or get beat down. Realizing what was up, Alwa quickly charged dark energy, ready to fight. Since they last met, he had not just been slacking off. He leveled up too, unfortunately for him. No amount of training could close the gap between a literal god and an ant. Leaving his victims there for the elders to find would be totally fine. In 5 years, the first massive war against the Alliance is inevitably going to pop off. By then, Chris really needs the Dark Magic clan fully under his control. To pull that off, he must be ambitious. He cannot share a single drop of sacred darkness with anyone, now that his competition has been eliminated. Now it is time to claim the ultimate prize. It is time to take possession of the legendary sacred darkness. This wild power grants a demon the pure possibility of evolving into a true transcendent being, and it is right behind that door. Back in his youth, the clan head elder was known as an absolute genius who absorbed 80% of the sacred darkness. That turned him into one of the most powerful lifeforms around, even back during the legendary era of the demon monarchs. On the other hand, the Dark Destroyer, the actual founder of the clan, sucked up over 90% of pure dark energy and became the literal demon king. Now, pay close attention to this next part. Logic dictates that hitting 100% of this stuff should push Chris way past those legends. If he dominates this pure core, he has the potential to surpass even the Demon Emperor. The second his palm touched that core, a massive wave of darkness flooded through his veins and arteries. While he is chilling inside the sacred ground, the clan higher-ups are in total chaos. They just discovered that every single one of their top prospects got completely wiped out. Besides the crazy bastard himself, even young Amalo Loin is right on the edge of death. It is a complete disaster. Naturally, the old boomers immediately jumped to the conclusion that Chris must have used some forbidden cheat or magic tool, demanding a full-on investigation right away. But before the situation could totally spiral out of control, the second young lady, Jubin Debaran, stepped in. She firmly believes that cheating punk will not be able to leave the sacred ground anyway. Since he hasn't come out in 2 whole days, he must be completely dead. They absolutely refuse to believe anyone can absorb an insane amount of sacred darkness nonstop. Even the clan head elder hit a hard upper limit back in his prime. They literally cannot imagine a world where Chris performs better. Once the sacred ground is totally done with him, there will not even be a corpse left over. Honestly, Jupin is absolutely fuming right now. In the crazy, unlikely event that Chris is actually still breathing, she intends to kill him herself. See, when their dad died fighting the Alliance, Loin and Jupin were adopted by their uncle Vic, who is Count Langam. The siblings' position inside the clan was already super shaky. With Loin totally failing to get sacred darkness, it becomes even more fragile. Nobody is gonna back her little brother as the heir now. She wants major payback right away. She is crazy mad. Can you believe this? Even the clan servants are gossiping about the useless kid trapped inside the sacred ground. The general consensus. Everyone thinks he is dead, punished for his crazy greed and forgetting his place. Meanwhile, his maid Lavency has been waiting for her master completely non-stop. The servants joke that the master's ghost was destined to meet his spooky ghost maid, but soon enough. Annoyed by their rude comments, Marie literally almost decapitated one of the servants, even though her heart is totally uneasy while waiting for the young master. She won't tolerate any nosy idiots dragging his name through the mud. If she hears that trash talk again, Marie threatens to turn them into ghost puppets. Honestly, Marie just wants to see her master's face again. A guy who makes his maid wait this long is seriously not cool at all. Speaking of the guy everyone on the outside is stressing over, Chris is currently floating in an endless, choking void of pitch-black darkness that is crushing his throat. He just hit 70% absorption. The whole process turned out to be way harder than he expected, but he is absolutely determined to push through no matter what. He is still miles away from 90%, the point where the real nightmare starts. Even though he is eager, absorbing too much energy past his limit would literally shatter his core. He cannot just die in this place without changing the course of history first. He is the main character. Thinking about it, there is one specific thing that could help him out massively. A dragon heart. Dragons possess the absolute biggest natural power containers. In his first life, he learned how to perfectly mimic the complexities of a dragon heart for just a few minutes, as he starts modifying his own heart structure to imitate a mythical beast. His dark absorption rate completely skyrocketed. After a few intense minutes of relentless sucking, he started approaching his absolute limit. That is when a super familiar voice offered him some help. Manifesting right in front of him, Mafina appeared. The top seed of Gina's 7th realm, she is enigmatically gorgeous. Natural law says that a high-tier demon definitely should not be able to form a physical body in this space. But Mafina flexed that demon power is deeply linked to darkness. Whipping up a body made entirely of pure darkness is an absolute breeze for someone like her. It also gives her the ultra-rare ability to help Chris out here, completely free of charge, with 0 strings attached. In all his crusades against demons, Chris had never heard of a sweet deal like this. Mafina just giggled at his confusion, insisting she was only acting on a passing whim. There are 0 hidden agendas behind her actions. Literally, all he has to do is grab her hand and soak up all of that sweet sacred darkness. Fast forward 1 whole week later, the clan head elder is sipping tea outside, chilling with Simon who is serving him. So what do you and I make of this? Even the old man is losing hope that the kid is alive, since there has been 0 news for a week. Aunt Mario just cannot understand how such a smart kid fell for such reckless greed. Stick with me here, guys. Simon reports that the top brass, especially Viscount Langham, totally agree, they need a decision pronto. The Viscount wants to shut down access to the sacred grounds immediately. They're just waiting on the chief elder's approval, but the old man hates being pushed around by shady punks, calling Simon a bloodsucker like it's some sort of insult. He asks his loyal servant what he thinks. Simon honestly estimates that the reckless kid's chances of making it out alive are basically 0. Even so, he just couldn't shake the feeling that Chris might actually surprise him. After all, he's a pretty interesting young master. Trusting that gut feeling, the chief elder flexes his authority and decides to extend the deadline by 1 more day. Viscount Langham has to wait 24 hours before slamming those doors shut. Aunt Marion breathes a quiet sigh of relief. Over the next 24 hours, we'll see if our boy can actually crush the first Demon King's crazy record. Mafina urges Chris to grab her hand before the power completely escapes him, but he rejects her without hesitation. She thinks he's being absolutely ridiculous. He should know by now that humans can barely handle a tiny fraction of that insane power. But Chris, with pure determination in his eyes, reminds her she's forgetting one huge detail. They are in a world where concepts shape reality. She stares at him in total disbelief, wondering if he's actually undergoing demonization. After all, it's the absolute forbidden peak of mystic magic, a technique where a mortal briefly transforms into a literal demon just to unleash some terrifying power. It's as deadly to the user as it is strong. Lena once died under its crushing weight. Her life shattered the second she cast that wild spell. Now watch closely. Chris takes another angle. If he removes the spell part's amplifying dark energy, Could he mold this world into a container and capture the power without paying the fatal price? Step by step, it starts working. Using that container, he crosses 90%, pulling every single thread of sacred darkness into himself. Mafina's eyes go wide, completely unable to accept this reality. A black crescent forms. A simple human, just a tiny bug in this massive world, totally leaving his fragile body behind. She can only wonder who is really hiding under that human skin. Chris looks right at the demon, and calmly reminds her with total confidence that he's a genius. The demon can keep rotting there for eternity, but he's out of here. As he walks away, Mafina calls out, promising they will definitely meet again some other time. But Chris just finds her annoying words echoing in the air like a totally unwanted promise. The demon starts laughing, a harsh and piercing screech. And Chris thinks they must be absolutely crazy to believe he'd ever come back here willingly. The demon's laughter echoes harshly into the void, but Chris just keeps walking, ignoring it. While leaving, he actually starts wondering how long he's been stuck in there. By his math, it's been about a week, so the main family must be in absolute panic mode trying to find him. A tiny smirk crosses his face as he thinks about something hilarious, deciding this is the perfect time to pull a little prank. With that, he takes off his mask while stepping out of the realm. He soon arrives before the Viscount Macfield right beside him. They report the young master has returned, and everyone instantly freaks out, completely shocked the brat actually survived. Viscount Langham, current head of the dark magic clan, demands all the details with a low, commanding voice. They explain Chris barely survived, basically hanging onto life by a single thread. He's deeply exhausted now. The healer senses pure dark energy inside him, reporting that his energy is completely chaotic, spinning violently out of control. You and I both know the truth, right? But these guys quickly assume it'll be nearly impossible for Chris to control that dark energy. They silently agree there's no way. Someone like him could have absorbed over 80% of the sacred darkness. All that precious energy now seems totally wasted because of his supposedly selfish hunger. Somebody speaks up, telling the Viscount directly that Chris needs to be held accountable. The Viscount takes note, waving off the crowd with his hand and ending the meeting by kicking everyone out. Then he turns to Macfield, asking if these reports are actually accurate. Macfield confirms it, explaining he saw Chris with the healer, and something was definitely messed up with his core. The Viscount then adds that Loyan agreed too, and Macfield nods along. Honestly, Loyan was supposed to be the young lord, the sacrificial pawn, the key to their whole poison magic clan scheme. Their massive plan to wipe out the poison magic clan alongside Jupin has to be delayed. The Viscount seriously notes how even his own father has taken an interest in Chris. Realizing that just one tiny fish can completely change the flow of an entire river. Finally, the Viscount orders Macfield to bring Chris to the Hall of Darkness tomorrow. With a blank face, he casually drops that he'll announce Chris's future elimination to all the vassals. The next day, Chris is just chilling in the palace, hands in his pockets, thinking about how desperately they're trying to trash him. He looks around at the crowd, noticing they brought out all the heavy hitters. These guys are clearly ready to put on a whole show. The Viscount cuts to the chase, demanding if Chris even knows what mistakes he made during the sacred dark rite. Chris feels absolutely zero annoyance. He's just not bothered at all. The Viscount heavily pushes him to speak out loud. Shrugging, Chris casually explains that his peers simply don't measure up to the dark magic clan's mighty bloodline. So honestly, he should have beaten them up way harder, he just didn't get the chance. Someone in the room snaps back, asking if those peers can even walk anymore. The Viscount just waves them off, locking his focus back onto Chris. So where does this leave us? He points out Chris's true mistake was burning through the dark magic clan's precious resources without delivering the expected results. Let's dive right in. Chris tilts his head, asking what results they wanted. The Viscount bluntly demands 70% purity. Chris just raises an eyebrow, casually wondering out loud what kind of punishment awaits if he didn't hit that 70% mark. The Viscount lays it out: no dark magic techniques, permanent expulsion from the main house, and zero chance of ever inheriting the Count's estate. Leaning back, Chris fires a question right back at them. How exactly will they judge him when even the clan head has absolutely no clue? That is when Chid, sitting nearby, raises his hand and calls out to his dear little brother. He offers a brutal solution. Even with a messy core, a direct clash of dark energies can easily prove just how pure Chris's power is. Since Loin absorbed 70% of the sacred darkness, Chris just needs to beat him. That would prove he achieved something way better. Everyone knows a raw dark energy clash is the absolute most brutal way to test strength. If their energy levels match, the one with higher purity will instantly crush the other guy. When similar ranks collide like this, higher purity always wins and can totally shatter the loser's core. Chris realizes Chid is super sneaky, but he accepts the challenge anyway. He tells them that if he proves himself right here, the clan head better back him up and let him take the young lord test. Chid agrees, saying it totally does not matter if you are main or branch family. Raw strength rules the magic empire. The crowd looks totally shocked, whispering about the crazy drama. Chid adds that if Chris lacks control, this clash might destroy his core. To keep things fair, he claims he will only use beginner 2-star dark energy. Though the purity gap will still be obvious, soon they are facing off, ready to fight. Chris smirks, telling Chid not to hold back. Honestly, he should probably worry about protecting his own precious core instead. Now pay close attention here. Chid is curious to see Chris's real power, and the duel finally kicks off. They both unleash their dark energy skills, pushing and pulling in a crazy power struggle. Chid's eyes suddenly go wide as he realizes Chris is deflecting his attacks without even charging his own energy. Thinking fast, Chid rethinks using his 2-star dark energy. Feeling super disappointed and annoyed, Chid calls out Chris for his cocky attitude, wondering if that is seriously all he brought. A guy nearby warns Chid that busting out 4-star energy could destroy Chris's core. But Chris keeps pushing with insane control, dropping dark energy moves while Chid struggles to match him. Chris casually warns him again, saying losing control right now could shatter his own core. Then suddenly, blood starts dripping from Chid's mouth as the attacks land hard. Chris asks if he has had enough, secretly planning to completely wreck Chid's core. Out of nowhere, Chid completely surrenders, admitting that Chris's dark energy has actually hit at least 90% purity. The Viscount cannot hide his pure shock at 90%. Those words hit like a truck, standing there, super calm and confident. Chris points out he earned the right to be a young lord now. Right, the Viscount stays dead silent, looking incredibly tense. The Viscount finally speaks up, promising that Chris gets a real shot to take the young lord test. Even though no branch family member has ever taken it before, as acting clan head, the Viscount says he will randomly pick a test. I know what you're thinking. Chris realizes the Viscount is definitely rigging an impossible test. Plus, the Viscount says Chris will be judged in 2 crazy stages. First, prove his talent, then pull off a legit young lord level miracle. Chris wonders how to prove this talent, and the rules are set. Hit 3 stars within 3 months. Inside, Chris is feeling super confident. He is a literal genius, so crushing this goal might actually be a total breeze. The Viscount acts excited to see Chris' progress. Later, the Viscount vents to Chid about his massive disappointment. Chid totally admits he messed up by underestimating Chris, which really hurt his own standing too. They agree to eliminate Chris before he becomes a massive threat. The Viscount calms Chid down, reminding him why nobody absorbs over 70% purity. He explains that the purer the dark energy you absorb into your body, the harder it gets to rank up. The challenge just becomes insanely exponential, so hitting a simple 3-star level takes way longer than usual. Chid then wonders about absorbing 90%. The Viscount calmly replies that despite Chris's insane talent, he will never break that barrier. Meanwhile, Chris sits down to eat, and Rana runs in saying the whole mansion is buzzing about his epic win. Her heart is racing as she gushes over how incredibly charismatic he is. But Chris just feels completely embarrassed by her super bold words. Marie softly adds that while waiting for him, she realized her true feelings, missing him like crazy with every single endless day that he was gone. Right then, another lady bursts into the room asking if Chris is hurt. So what do you and I make of this? With Chris's crazy speed, he is fine, but the lady insists on checking him anyway. Let's dive right into this one. Holding her hand, Chris gently tells Marie it's totally okay to admit she cares. He wonders out loud if she's the only one sweating over him, mentioning that only the hero Evan seems to give a crap. Meanwhile, Chris takes a quiet moment to himself, realizing it's been a hot minute since he felt this kind of warmth. Ever since running from that ruthless clan that literally wanted him dead, his past life was basically just endless bloodshed. Still, even in that dark past, he met some genuinely kind hearts. Now, he finally has the strength to say the things he couldn't back then. In that soft moment, he actually drops a massive thank you to Marie. She looks totally confused at first. But he doubles down, thanking her for her crazy patience and for faithfully waiting for him. A massive wave of pure joy hits her when she realizes he finally gets her true feelings. Making her heart just beat out of her chest, Chris jokes that she doesn't even have a heart. But she fires right back, claiming that's only because he, the young Master Chris, absolutely stole it. Then she brings up that, since she literally waited for him, he owes her a reward, suggesting they go for a walk together. She's super shocked and overwhelmed, asking if he's actually being serious. He calmly nods, and the second they step outside, he admits he still needs to hit 3 stars in 3 months, totally acknowledging it's going to be brutally hard. Even with the Branch family tutors holding his hand, it's rough. And handling 90% pure dark energy alone, yeah, basically impossible. Marie hits back with a playful jab, pointing out that he just looks super eager to cause trouble wherever he goes. Suddenly, Chris's aunt rolls up out of nowhere, and he respectfully greets her. She takes one look and notes that maybe this isn't the best time for him to be casually strolling the garden. "I know what you're thinking, Busted." She demands to know if he's found a training master. Chris jokingly suggests that, hey, maybe she could take the job, but she shuts that down instantly. He teases that she gave him false hope for nothing, but she just tells him to follow her. Before dipping out, he apologizes to Marie, promising to catch up at dinner, and she gives him an understanding nod. Walking alongside his aunt, Chris admits he has absolutely no clue who this new master she's introducing is. But he totally thanks her for looking out for him. She fires back that he really shouldn't be thanking her yet, claiming he'll totally understand why once he experiences it firsthand. She drops a heavy warning: this master does not mess around, and literally none of his siblings could survive the guy's lessons. Still, she tells him to go all out, because this is a one-time shot and he definitely shouldn't disappoint the master. As they keep walking, they spot a little kid nearby. Chris checks him out and tells his aunt the kid looks super lost. Chris gently ruffles the kid's hair, casually asking where his parents are. But right after, a sudden jolt just rips right through him. His aunt quickly snaps that he needs to show some manners and bow. Snapping out of it, Chris nods, suddenly realizing that this little kid in front of him is actually the literal incarnation of the clan boss. So he quickly drops a super respectful bow. Now watch closely here, Chris realizes this tiny kid's power is sitting around 90%. No, it's actually way beyond that. Chris mentally freaks out, realizing the kid has achieved something truly insane. The clan boss humbly accepts the praise, but points out it was still a totally reckless move, asking Chris if he gets what he means. Chris nods, knowing exactly what's up. The clan boss explains that after soaking up 80% of the sacred darkness, even he hit some absolutely brutal walls that most people never face. He straight up admits, even his ancestor wouldn't have reached this crazy level without the Demon Emperor's grace. The boss confesses he can't even begin to imagine the insane roadblocks Chris is about to run into. So, he offers him a massive out. Chris can return some of that pure dark energy back to the ether. With Chris's crazy talent, he could handle 80%. But grabbing anything more than that is straight up pure greed. Taking a breath, Chris asks to speak completely honestly. He drops a question that totally stuns his aunt, pointing out that while their dark magic clan doesn't compare to the mystic or undead clans, which are known as the absolute top tier, they are still looked at as the absolute weakest among the 12 noble clans. The clan boss gets curious, asking if Chris thinks there's an actual reason for that bad rep. Chris thinks it over, mentioning that even though their clan has leveled up a lot recently, mostly thanks to the boss's epic achievements, people still say the clan lost its original edge. Chris firmly believes there's only one real reason: the clan seriously lacks enough absolute powerhouses who have actually hit that absolute stage above 8 stars of power. He quietly thinks about the upcoming future, when the Demon King of Carnage will totally jump the Dark Magic clan, and by then, Nordian will be gone, with 0 8-star warriors left and just a few 7-star demons. They'll be sitting ducks when that super dark day finally hits, They, along with the clan's 10,000 soldiers, are totally destined to clash with the Demon King of Chaos, only to fall and become his literal slaves. This proves exactly why having absolute stage warriors at 8 stars or higher is do or die for the clan's survival. There is zero chance the old boss isn't stressing over that exact future. The clan boss totally gets the fear of getting crushed under the insane weight of dark energy and losing the ability to ever level up. But still, he wonders if Chris is curious about it, gripping his resolve tight. Chris wonders if his epic power will just buff the clan, or if he'll smash through these trials and become a being with literally infinite power. The boss chuckles, softly praising Chris's bold words while dropping a hint that he better not regret them later. You and I know this is gonna be wild. Alright, you and I are about to dive into this wild setup. 1 minute he is totally shocked, and boom, he is standing inside a crazy thick forest. He quickly learns the first rule to inherit pure dark energy is simple: just survive. Suddenly, he feels serious danger creeping up on him, forcing him to scan the area. He focuses hard. Meanwhile, somewhere completely else, the clan boss and Chris's aunt are watching. As she watches, she realizes this brutal trial is happening all over again. She gently reminds the boss that throwing a 2-star kid in there into a den with 4 magic monsters is a super risky choice. The clan boss just jokes around, asking if fighting only 1 monster would even be enough. Back over to Chris dealing with this trial. He spots movement and wonders if it is a rock lizard. At that exact moment, his aunt feels this slight pain in her chest. She totally wishes she did not have to watch him suffer. But the boss calmly explains that only through a desperate fight for survival will Chris actually face the true core of pure dark energy. You only understand it fast and deep when you get pushed right to the absolute edge of death. His aunt silently hopes Chris will not hurt too much today. Then, the boss casually asks if she actually brought the snacks. She pulls out some homemade sweets and hands them right over. His face totally lights up, saying how much he craves sugar after using dark energy. Chilling out, he starts watching like it is a movie, saying everything looks better in the dark. He settles down, ready to watch his grandson train. Back in the spooky forest, Chris stares down the monsters. He realizes he is not just facing a rock lizard, but a massive 2-headed bear too. Now pay attention here, because this is where the survival test gets totally insane. Chris gets frustrated, realizing 1 hit could shatter his bones. Still moving fast, the rock lizard suddenly spits a nasty stream of poison. Seeing that venom totally shocks him. It makes him completely understand that 1 single mistake here could easily end his life. But he quickly reminds himself of the reality. This is still just a training assignment. There is zero chance the boss would throw an impossible challenge at him without a way out. The boss somehow knows what he is thinking, noting there is no obvious, clear solution to the crazy situation he is stuck in right now. Chris processes this, wondering if the clan leader actually expects him to find the answer himself by beating a monster way stronger than he is. But Marion gently clarifies it is not about finding answers. The boss literally just wants to see him get beaten up to test his pain tolerance. Chris lets out a soft breath, accepting his fate. He decides this is just another tiny hurdle. While facing off against the rock lizard and bear, Chris notices their absolutely unbelievable speed and strength. Still, he figures there has to be a method to beat them. Suddenly, the bears charge right at him. Meanwhile, over there, where the boss and Marion are chilling, the clan leader mentions Chris definitely has some real talent. He notices the kid's movements are nothing like anyone else. Marion nods along, though she points out he's still just a kid. Back in the brawl, Chris actually slams the bear into the ground, standing on top of it like an absolute boss. The clan leader and aunt are completely stunned. The leader asks him, totally curious how he pinned down that massive beast. Chris explains the bear had insane raw power and defense. I know what you are thinking, but watch how he exploits those exact weaknesses: speed and low magic resistance. He says he grabbed the perfect opening and injected dark magic straight into its heart right at that exact moment. Eshid looks at the clan boss, wondering if that was dark death, a sick technique the master usually uses. Shortly after, Chris turns back to the rock lizard, remembering there is still 1 target left. The lizard charges, but Chris lands a super clean hit. It keeps spitting poison. Chris quickly realizes this annoying lizard has 3 stone hearts. Unless all 3 are destroyed at the exact same time, it will just keep reviving. Thinking on his feet, he wonders if it is time to switch up his whole method. He dashes at the lizard, aiming straight for its heart, destroying it effortlessly. Watching this, Echid thinks it is absolutely incredible. Recognizing it as a form of dark death, he turns to the boss to confirm if he is right. The boss, unable to see clearly, tells him to step aside. Then he looks at Marion, asking if she was the one who taught Chris that. She calmly denies it. The boss mentions it is totally not something anyone can just pick up easily anyway. He declares there is really no need to keep studying dark magic after this. Suddenly, the boss cuts in, saying that is more than enough for today since the assignment is totally complete. Soon after, Chris regroups with the clan boss. The old man actually admits Chris's performance went way beyond his expectations, and he did an awesome job. Catching his breath, Chris says it was an epic lesson. Thanks to the master, he finally figured out how to use dark magic himself. Squinting his eyes, the boss warns him not to get too cocky right now, then announces, "It is finally time to start the real dark magic training." He gestures for the other two to leave. They catch the hint and quietly exit the room. This leaves Chris and the clan boss completely alone, right before the very first magic lesson officially begins. The boss turns to him, asking what he thinks magic really is. Chris responds, guessing it is all about dominating the enemy using absolutely perfect darkness. So what does perfect darkness actually mean? You and I will wait to see. Alright, stick with me here, you and I are about to see some epic dark magic training. Chris is totally speechless. The clan boss watches him quietly, demanding full attention. He drops some heavy lore, saying unlocking the seal is where all the true darkness hides. He tells Chris he has to take it one step at a time while Chris just listens closely. Once he heads down those deep stairs, 12 massive abysses will be waiting for him. After a quick pause, the boss starts chanting. He summons the wisdom-seeking crow, asking it to accept him, honor him, and wrap him up in absolute darkness. Once the spell finishes, he just holds out his hand, shaping the spell, and raw dark energy literally pops off right in front of him. Chris watches, completely blown away, as flashes of black light flicker everywhere. Suddenly, a super sharp pain slices right across his neck. Realizing something definitely just cut him, his body does not have a single scratch, but the feeling is way too real. The boss casually explains that it is a conceptual blade. It only cuts exactly what it wants to cut. He calls this fierce energy the Black Sword, literally forged out of pure dark magic. He gives Chris exactly 1 month to train, ordering him to perfectly refine the Black Sword he just witnessed. After dropping those heavy words, the boss turns and walks off, leaving Chris standing there completely stunned. He grinds through his training, getting totally exhausted, so he just takes his shirt off. Looking at himself, he figures he seriously needs to bulk up. He collapses on the floor, debating if he should push for one more set. Soon enough, he fires up his dark energy again, focusing super hard on his practice. But yeah, he quickly realizes this will not be a walk in the park. No matter how many times he summons it, keeping it stable for 10 seconds is basically impossible. Plus, it feels nothing like the boss's darkness. That guy's power is way more intense, hitting like absolute, pure pitch-black energy. Still, he figures if he pushes forward, those 12 abysses waiting for him gotta hold a secret trick somewhere. So, he starts chanting the spell again. Now pay attention, because this is where the dynamic shifts. Somewhere else, the boss arrives with Marion. They head downstairs, totally assuming that by now Chris must have realized how weak he is after failing the mock slash so many times. The boss looks over and asks Marion if she is actually worried. She replies that without a faster method, they both know there are only 2 months left until the young master's big exam. The boss points out that fast progress is just flat out impossible, with how pure the dark magic inside Chris actually is. Rushing him will only make him crash into a massive brick wall. It is way better to build a solid foundation instead of obsessing over some exam. They finally reach Chris's training spot. Chris spots them and mentions he thought they would show up a bit later. They look completely shocked to see him. He genuinely thanks them, super grateful that their guidance helped him hit tier 3 way faster than he expected. But as they can see, this is the absolute best he can do right now. It took him about a week to form the dark sword, which he honestly thought was pretty useless before. Now he realizes those vague hints the boss dropped about the 12 abysses actually meant each abyss is a core, vital trait of the dark sword itself. The boss, even though he finds Chris a tiny bit annoying, realizes the kid actually understood the assignment, even managing to manifest the true dark sword. He thinks back to how it took him a whole year just to form a basic one. And mastering all 12 dark magics to complete the blade, that would take a lifetime, yet Chris pulled it off in just one single month. Which makes him wonder if this kid might actually be the shining ray of hope at the end of his long journey. Later on, the boss tells Chris to gear up for tomorrow, hinting the easy lessons are officially over. Chris is super hyped. He fully trusts the guy and is ready for whatever comes next. He figures since he finally broke through a major wall, maybe it is the perfect time to treat himself. He heads over to the liquor stash, feeling super satisfied looking at all the perfectly lined up bottles. Grabbing a super fancy one, he thinks about how he is holding top-tier expensive liquor he could never have imagined tasting before. He plans to enjoy it quietly, since Marie isn't around to take notes, but right as he lifts it. Okay, I know what you're thinking. A chill moment. Not quite. A woman barges in, snarking about him drinking during the day and saying he really has not changed. He does not recognize her at first, only noticing she gives off the aura of a Tier 3 mage. From her eye color, he can tell she is definitely not from a dark mage bloodline. He wonders if she actually knows him. She gets visibly annoyed that he does not recognize her and finds him super annoying. Without any warning, she straight up shoves him. Her bodyguard quickly steps in, telling her to stop and saying there is zero need to waste time on someone like him. Chris just sits there on the floor, processing the hit. A second later, some guy rushes over. Chris asks why this random stranger is acting so incredibly rude. The guy then explains that this woman is young Lady Merrick, hailing from the super elite supreme poison dark magic family. Chris's mind starts racing. He wonders, since she is from that specific family, could she actually be his fiancé? However, the older guy clears up the confusion real quick, saying she is actually his ex-fiancé. Merrick walks away, and her mind drifts back to when she was 8 years old, sitting bored in a garden. Back then, she figured everyone would just crowd around her brother anyway, so she completely failed to understand why her dad even dragged her out to this dark mage family event in the first place. Meanwhile, someone in the crowd stares at her, whispering and wondering if she is the illegitimate daughter. They also gossip that Dukem might have changed his stance since his son cannot have heirs, meaning he might desperately need a daughter to secure a son-in-law one day. Right at that exact moment, a young Chris walks up, asking why she is sitting all alone. She snaps, yelling she isn't a kid and her name is Marissa. Chris introduces himself, and she quietly wonders if he is Baron Cassart's son. Trust me, you and I are going to love where this goes. Alright, you and I are diving into one wild backstory here. Chris tells her to ignore the adults for now and just take her sweet revenge later. Hearing this, she makes a silent promise. She is going to become the absolute strongest dark mage and utterly crush anyone who talks down to her. Chris totally loves that fierce energy. He says that is exactly the kind of attitude a dark mage family needs. He points out that if she actually wants to reach the top, sticking by his side is her best bet. Then, he holds out his hand, offering a personal tour of the estate. She hesitates for a split second, but decides to tag along. Snap back to the present. Marissa shakes off that old memory, though it still hurts. That whole engagement was just political damage control. It used to keep her up at night, stressing over the future they could have had, but she is definitely not that naive anymore. Later on, she rolls out of bed and heads over to meet Viscount Langham. He greets her with a smile, asking what brings her by. She brings up the spicy news. A brand new relic just popped up right in the neutral zone between their two rival territories. He nods, immediately asking how her supreme poison dark magic family plans to handle this. Since they snatched the last relic, he wonders if they will back off this time. Marissa shuts that down fast. No way are they handing it over, adding that his family would do the exact same thing. The Viscount smirks, suggesting a totally fair competition. She agrees and pitches a wild idea. Both families will send their own scout teams, finders keepers, but there is a catch: maximum 10 mages per squad, and strictly 3 stars or lower. The Viscount asks if this is just to dodge an all-out war. She nods, saying massive casualties would literally only help their worst enemies. Plus, she throws in that the vibes over at the Demon King's castle have been super unstable lately. Watch closely here. He agrees, but drops an extra condition that instantly puts Marissa on high alert. He makes it crystal clear, if the Poison family cheats, his dark mages get to take this new relic plus the old one too. Marissa asks him to define cheating. He bluntly says he means any shady, underhanded moves out there. Like messing with his scout team, especially since lethal traps and nasty obstacles are basically the Supreme Poison family's whole brand. She promises 0 dirty tricks and locks in the deal. The Viscount then casually asks if she is personally leading her squad, and she confirms. He gets hyped, saying he finally gets to see the legendary Maiden of 1,000 Poisons in action. Marissa coldly replies that when Expedition Day arrives, she will be waiting for his guys. The meeting wraps up right there. He heads off to play some chess. Placing his pieces, he brainstorms how to crush Marissa. He realizes this upcoming clash is going to be absolutely epic. 2 whole months fly by in a flash. The seasons slowly start to shift around them. During that time, Chris has been grinding non-stop, pushing himself through absolute brutal training sessions daily. He starts noticing the other kids acting weird, dealing with hidden baggage from past lives. The weak ones who lose just quietly vanish. Meanwhile, the jealous losers start lurking in the shadows, literally sharpening their weapons and waiting for the perfect time to strike. Others are playing it super safe, quietly plotting for whatever crazy trials come next. Fast forward, and Chris pulls up to Viscount Langham's estate. Langham steps out with his top guys. He announces it is finally time to prove their worth, and you and I both know Chris is totally stepping up to flex his power. He swings his massive sword through the air with insane power and perfect control, totally showing off his god-tier skills. Rowan is in the crowd, and seeing that strike instantly reminds him of the dark sword. He is completely speechless, mind blown by Chris's massive progress. Chris checks out the crowd and catches their weirdly shocked faces, making him pause. He definitely just left a huge impression on these guys. Then a crucial memory suddenly hits his brain. The clan leader explicitly warned him to never expose the dark sword's true power to Langham. If he did, Langham would just force impossible missions on him. He was also told to never brag about his secret training. Those exact words bounce around his head. He realizes he actually held back perfectly today, just like he was told. Still, seeing Langham's jaw on the floor gives him a massive adrenaline rush. He successfully flexed on everyone, without even tapping into his real monster strength. Viscount Langham stares at the scene and makes his call. Giving Chris a hard look of respect, he announces the second testing phase. They are sending teams to grab that neutral zone relic. Since the Supreme Poison Dark Magic family is in the mix, things will get messy. He promises that if Chris pulls this off, he will officially be named a legitimate, recognized heir. Hearing this, Chris smirks, thinking this mission sounds like a total walk in the park. He figures he can easily solo it. But literally right, as he thinks about that. Langham interrupts, ordering him to join Princess Jubian's personal unit. The second he drops her name, a massive wave of pure shock hits the whole castle. Langham drops the bomb that this was Rowan's mission. Trust me, you are going to want to see how this plays out. Stick with me. Chris is stunned, but quickly cools down and accepts the order without hesitating. He leaves the hall escorted by guards. Meanwhile, Ren turns to his dad, super worried that Chris might just completely wreck everything again like he did before. His dad just answers super calmly. He promises him there is absolutely 0 to worry about, and everything will go down exactly as planned. He tells Roy to be ready for his own big moment. Roy listens, but something about his dad's chill vibe actually leaves him feeling totally on edge. The next morning, Chris heads out totally lost in his head. While walking, massive doubts start creeping in, making him feel like Langham might have handed him a literal suicide mission. The fear just will not leave his mind. He keeps overthinking the task, spinning in circles, totally unable to chill out. Then, Langham's earlier words suddenly pop right back into his head. This mission was originally meant for Rowan. That thought makes Chris wonder what actually went down in the original timeline. Does he know Rowan was supposed to be the actual heir during that time? Not him, but then it hits him. He never heard a single thing about Rowan during the Great War era. That realization seriously messes with his head. While he keeps walking, his dog suddenly speaks up. In a super playful tone, it asks if he wants the real truth. While totally insisting, Chris has to keep petting him to hear the story. Frustrated but way too curious, Chris agrees, completely desperate for some answers. The dog starts dropping lore about the demon relic incident. It was this massive hidden conflict between the Dark Mage House and the Supreme Poison Dark Magic family that never made the news. It explains that while hunting for the relic, the entire Dark Mage House got totally wiped out. Now pay close attention here. The Supreme Poison family took heavy losses too, but both sides totally buried the truth. Most importantly, the dog drops the bomb that this incident was the spark for a massive disaster. Chris is listening super closely, absolutely stunned by what he is hearing. He asks why it even happened. The dog keeps going, saying Nordian was actually killed by Marketschlam's son. If that hadn't gone down, the Blood Demon King would not have snatched control of the Dark Mage family so easily. Because of that one single death, the era of destruction rolled in way ahead of schedule. Chris just freezes in his tracks, soaking up every single word. The wild idea that the Dark Mage House got destroyed makes him seriously question if, in this new timeline, he is actually fated to die instead of Rowan. The fear totally rips through him. He finally realizes this mission is not just some simple walk in the park. Instead, it is a huge piece of Marky Langam's master plan. After thinking it over, Chris figures out this is not just some test, it is a crazy dangerous scheme. But since he does not have any hard proof yet, he decides playing it safe is best. He reminds himself he is only third domain, wondering what he can even realistically pull off right now. Still, he chooses to stay totally cautious, and decides to head outside first. Right then, he clears his head and steps forward. But just as he is about to leave, someone actually calls out and tells him to stop, demanding to know where he is going. Chris stops and glances back, spotting some guy looking super mad. The dude speaks to him in this really sharp tone, just completely full of irritation. Chris stares at him calmly and replies with zero emotion, asking if it even matters where he is headed. The guy steps closer, bringing up that he heard about his spot on the expedition. Even though he does not want to join himself, he wants to make absolutely sure Chris can handle the mission that was originally meant for Rowan. You and I can see this guy is baiting him, right? But Chris stays totally rock solid. He just claps back, asking if the dude wants him to do nothing. He adds that Langam gave him the job because he thought Rowan could not handle it. Those words hit super hard, and the guy's absolute rage totally explodes. Without even thinking, he lunges right at Chris, swinging his sword and unleashing all his pent-up frustration. The blade slices through the air lightning fast, but Chris does not panic. He just smoothly dodges, avoiding the strike without breaking a sweat. The guy completely freezes up, totally unable to compute how Chris dodged him so easily. Chris just watches him calmly, announcing they have exchanged enough greetings for today. He points out they clearly hate each other, and promises he will not show his face again until the expedition starts. Then he turns around to leave, dropping that he has other chores to prep for. The guy just watches him walk away, throwing out one last snarky comment wishing him luck with gathering supplies. Chris just keeps on walking, totally unbothered. Behind him, the guy slowly lowers his sword, his eyes completely locked onto Chris's back. Right then, a super clear realization hits his brain as he figures out that Chris actually stared right at the incoming blade without even blinking. He only moved at the absolute last second, intentionally letting the attack miss. Right then, the guy realizes Chris is way more dangerous than he ever imagined. When Chris finally rolls into town, the streets are already absolutely buzzing with activity. All around him, tons of shops are painting their signs or setting up their displays. The colors are popping. Amazing food smells fill the air, and the loud chatter of the crowd is everywhere. A bit later, he grabs some street food and just starts eating it super casually. While he snacks, people nearby literally stop and stare at him, clearly super shocked by his chill behavior. A second later, the stall owner runs up to him, but Chris just hands over the cash without hesitating. Then, holding his food, he starts walking away while chewing, quietly thinking about how long it has actually been since he ate real meat, with a totally relaxed look. He admits that if he could, he would spend his whole life just eating and having fun. Walking along, he remembers a certain someone's shop should be nearby. Still chewing, he senses something behind him. That is where we leave it today, guys. Will his crazy instincts be enough to shake off whoever is tailing him? He sighs to himself, totally annoyed, especially since the guys tailing him look exactly like Mark Langenbaum's goons. But before he can move, bam, someone covers his mouth from behind. Stick with me here because things are about to get crazy. He's completely wide-eyed and totally confused. A mysterious girl suddenly drags him into a dark alleyway, keeping her hand clamped right over his mouth. Trying to keep him quiet, Chris twists his head to see her face, clueless about who she is or what she wants. Finally, she lets go, explaining he was being followed. But hey, her squad already took care of them, so he can totally chill out now. Still completely thrown off, Chris raises his voice. Like, how is he supposed to just chill after getting dragged into an alley with a hand over his mouth? Then he demands to know exactly who she is, super calmly. She drops her identity. She comes from the evil king's castle. Hearing that, Chris absolutely freezes in his tracks for a second. Then she keeps talking. She explains she's trying to stop some serious bad omens spreading all over the evil king's castle. She adds they really need to move right now, and asks if he's coming along. Stunned but not hesitating for long, Chris finally nods and tells her to lead the way. They start walking, with her staying just a few steps ahead. After a bit, he asks how far they're going. Without even turning around, she starts explaining the real situation. Lately, folks from the evil king's castle have been vanishing without a single trace. She drops the bomb that even the safe zones inside are getting wiped out, one by one. On top of that, the castle itself is a war zone, trapped in a constant turf war between three massive families. A place totally ruled by fear. According to her, the big bosses of those families couldn't care less if their own people live or die. That's exactly why she decided to get help from other families to wipe out the criminal groups causing all this chaos. Still, she admits you can't just ask for big favors without offering something back. So, she promises to hand over some prime intel, something that might actually stop the storm threatening to crush the Dark Mage family. Chris is totally speechless. Now pay attention, because she's about to drop an even heavier truth bomb. She reveals Mark Langenbaum is secretly teaming up with a huge shot from the Supreme Poison Dark Magic family. Their combined goal, taking out Marissa, the daughter of that exact same dark magic family. Hearing this, Chris gets hit with another wave of pure shock. He can't wrap his head around why his people and Marissa are being targeted. When he questions her motives, she dives deeper into the explanation. She tells him that if all this messes up the balance of the 27 forces, the shadow bosses inside the castle will get way more aggressive. Eventually, this total chaos could shatter the balance between the 12 dark mage families. Worst case scenario, it could trigger an even more massive tragedy. So she warns him straight up to get seriously prepared for the upcoming relic exploration. Plus, she tells him she hopes he safely becomes the young lord of the dark mage family, strong enough to crush anyone trying to ruin the peace. Hearing this, Chris realizes she even knows about his potential to become the young lord. He figures her intel network has to be crazy big and super powerful. But he isn't buying it blindly. He asks how he can possibly trust her, especially without a single ounce of proof. If she wants him to play ball, she has to offer some guarantee. Total frustration flashes across her face when he demands that. Seeing her hesitate, Chris drops a sarcastic comment, totally assuming she's got nothing to offer. But right before he walks off, she stops him with a dead serious look. Pulls something from her clothes and hands it over. You and I both know he wasn't expecting this. His eyes just go wide with absolute shock. Without saying a word, he turns and walks away, his brain spinning with questions. Behind him, the girl watches in total silence, her expression impossible to read. Then she looks down, whispering to the air, wondering why she can't just show Chris her real self. A creepy monster nearby answers back, it's strictly for her own safety. If Chris ever got into serious danger and called out her name, things could end up turning way worse. She listens and gives a soft nod, completely accepting that harsh truth. The monster nods right back, telling her to just wait and watch for now. He calls her by her name, Idrin. She nods slightly and answers in a quiet voice. Meanwhile, Chris just keeps on walking, tightly holding onto that exact card Idrin handed him. A little smirk pops up on his face. He realizes how incredibly lucky he is to get this exactly when needed. As he walks, he examines the card closely. It's straight from the dark auction house, a totally hidden black market dealing in smuggled relics and super rare animals. He knows these VIP access cards only go to verified nobles or the insanely rich. As he gets closer to the building, old memories hit him. Back then, none of his fighters had a card, so just getting inside was always a massive headache. Then, he suddenly notices the name Lee de Alfman printed right there, a name he has literally never heard before. His mind instantly flashes back to what Idrin said about Mark Langenam's super shady connection with the supreme poison dark magic family. Her words just keep echoing in his head, over and over again. Even so, he reminds himself he still can't verify her real identity. It's way too early to put all his trust in her. So he decides playing it safe and getting totally prepared is the smartest move. Reaching the auction building, he hits the counter and asks to send a pigeon message. The worker nods fast and hands over the stuff. Chris carefully scribbles down the name, straps it to the pigeon, and lets that bird fly. As the bird takes off, he watches silently. Step 1 is officially done. Now, you and I just have to see if it's finally time for him to meet that mysterious man. As Chris walks inside the building, the manager rushes over immediately. All right, stick with me here. The guard crosses his massive arms, completely blocking the path. He barks that this place isn't for trash and orders him to leave. But Chris, he just smirks and casually flashes his VIP card. The second the bouncer sees it, his whole vibe flips. Total panic hits his face, and he starts stuttering a massive apology. Turns out, Chris is holding a top-tier VIP pass. Instantly, all the other workers start bowing with total respect. Walking into the main hall, he spots a huge crowd already gathered. A second later, some dude walks up looking super confused. He asks if our boy is really Lai from the Wolfman family. Chris stays perfectly chill and says he is, just for today. He asks if there is an issue. The guy squints, super suspicious, thinking his voice sounds way too deep for that identity. But the guy brushes it off and says everything is fine. Never losing his cool, Chris demands to see the branch manager immediately. When the guy hesitates, Chris drops his voice. He repeats the order, coldly telling him to hurry it up. Finally, they reach a quiet back room where Chris takes a seat. Still looking a bit unsure, the worker promises to grab the boss and dips out. Meanwhile, Chris looks around. The whole room just screams absolute wealth and high status. He thinks to himself, every single detail is top tier, exactly what you would expect from the Rudolph Merchant Group. He remembers this group works super close with the Deer Merchant Union. They are even powerful enough to run an entire secret black market on the side. Honestly, their crazy influence covers pretty much every single supply route across the entire dark magic empire. He figures if the Rudolph group cannot find an item, literally nobody can. Suddenly, the door swings open. A woman walks in, radiating total boss energy. She introduces herself as Rubid, the auction house branch manager and Rudolph leader. She confirms he asked for her and bluntly asks what he wants. Now watch closely, because this gets wild. Chris loudly demands she bring out Ruina. Rubid completely freezes. Shocked to hear that specific name, she hesitates, repeating it looking totally confused. Chris just stares right through her. He insists he knows exactly who Ruina is. The true owner of Deer Merchant. She admits she knows Ruina, but claims even if she could call her, she has no clue what he means. Chris calmly replies she is already here. Naturally, that just makes her look even more lost. Chris adds that the artifact power must be hiding it. He teases that it is working extremely well. Then, flashing a tiny smirk, he says they will probably see each other more often. Her eyes go wide as her disguise literally melts away. Her true appearance finally shows up, and pure panic flashes across her face. She screams, demanding how he figured it out. Chris, completely unbothered. He thinks back to his past life. He remembers all the absolute hell she put him through, silently promising to make her pay when the time is right. Right now, he just roasts her to her face. He calls her out for hiding behind a super weak camouflage artifact. He laughs, telling her the magic effect is so trash it could not even cover her giant face properly. She gasps, looking at her own hands in absolute horror, screaming that the artifact could never fail like this. Chris is dying laughing inside, fully knowing he is lying. He would never actually insult such top-tier gear. Still, he pokes the bear again, joking that her face is just way too big for it to cover. Rubid's anger instantly shoots through the roof. She snaps back that is definitely not the reason. Then she reminds him he is not the real Lai. She guesses he must be a big shot in the dark magic empire. She scolds him for sneaking into a members-only spot under a totally fake identity. Basically, telling him he has zero right to act all high and mighty here. You feel this tension, right? Chris raises one eyebrow, asking who is actually threatening who. He warns her that he could easily drop some nasty rumors. Rumors about a high-ranking union official doing shady, secret business inside the dark magic empire. Her confidence completely crumbles on the spot. Changing her whole vibe, she desperately asks what exactly he wants from her. He just smiles. Minutes later, she hands over rare jewels, expensive goods, and top-tier materials. He takes the awesome loot, looking incredibly satisfied. While she turns around to prep even more stuff, Chris is feeling pretty proud. He realizes he finally scored exactly what he needs to craft a very specific, overpowered potion. Hyped up, he cheers that all this grinding is to avoid total ruin. He reminds himself that even if this loot will not drastically spike his stats, it is definitely enough to counter one or two of the backup traps that Marquis Langham might have waiting. After securing the bag, Chris leaves the auction house. Strolling past the nearby training grounds, he spots a bunch of guys practicing their combat skills. One of the trainees notices him and yells, asking where he is headed. He invites Chris to jump into the sparring session since he is around. Chris stops for a second, then just waves them off. He says he is way too exhausted from walking around. Plus, why train if he never plans on fighting like a regular grunt, let alone like Roy? With that epic brush off, he turns his back and wishes them luck. One of the trainees glares at him, super salty, and yells right at his back. Clearly triggered by the disrespect. But another guy steps right up and firmly drops a hand on his shoulder. He tells him to just let Chris go. He explains that Chris is barely getting anything out of this academy anyway, and if he stays lazy, he will just fall behind. Watching him walk away, the guy mutters in frustration, wondering why someone so insanely capable keeps wasting his advantage. Back to the deal, Chris nods slightly while Rubid wonders where he will use this stuff. She hands him a bag, and he silently laughs, calling her painfully uncultured in his head, though he admits right now is definitely not the time to complain about free premium loot. Rubid admits she has zero clue what his actual endgame is, but she heavily insists he keep her secret safe in exchange for all these rare items. He casually promises he will keep quiet, adding that their paths will definitely cross again. She just sighs, admitting she really hopes they never do. He asks if he should call her Rubid or Ruina, and that is where we leave it. Trust me, you want more. Stick with me here. He knows war might pop off soon, with both the Union and the Dark Magic Empire moving their pieces. The continent's political climate is getting super tense. If total war shuts down every trade route, then either the Union or the Empire is going down, cutting total trade right in half. Rubit brushes him off, insisting that war isn't some child's game to joke about. But he pushes back, pointing out those capital rumors are sounding pretty realistic. She goes quiet. It hits her that the brewing tension in the imperial capital is legit. With tons of noble houses pushing hard to declare war on the Union, she wonders why. He is dropping all this info, and if he expects a regular merchant to stop it, Chris coldly replies, "Just sponsor me." He claims he will build a future without war. She is totally confused. So he explains, any army must cross the southern Dark Kingdom, home to the Dark Mages. Now watch closely. If he locks down the Duke title this time and prepares, the absolute worst can be dodged and her profits stay safe. He asks if she is in, noticing her eyes hide nothing, and figuring investing in him might just be a brilliant play. Finally, she shakes his hand. Deal, but she warns him straight up, break this promise, and she drops him. Krish coldly states he doesn't repeat himself. Honestly, he doesn't mind her, even if she literally saved him once. Mentally calling her Mr. Money, he wishes her safety. Meanwhile, Chris is grinding elsewhere. Knowing a heavyweight from the Supreme Poison Dark Magic family is involved, he figures cooking up an antidote is a smart play. It has been a hot minute since he made one, so he isn't sure it'll be flawless. Flashback time. Inside the legendary medical clan, Chris struggles to keep the flame alive, complaining about being weak. Elra tells him to fan harder, reminding him their clan never fails at fire control. Annoyed, he asks who she thinks she is. I know what you and I are thinking. How did they meet? Back in the First War, she was forced to fight despite her age after the Blood Demon King. annihilated her clan. He considered their unmatched medical talent a huge threat among the 7 allied clans. Elra herself couldn't dodge the Demon King's blade. As Chris keeps fanning, she watches him quietly. Realizing how insane his skills are, he recreated her clan's medicine from just a quick explanation. She wonders why a guy like him didn't show up sooner. Chris notes that even the sacred medical clan is totally falling apart, with the clan head literally coughing up blood. He knows he only survived the Demon King's hit thanks to Elra's medicine. Coughing heavily, she forces herself up. She refuses to stay in bed while people suffer in this chaotic world. Chris thinks it is tragic the medical bloodline is dying out, but tells her to ditch the past and focus on recovering. Then she grabs a book off the table. She explains it holds the clan's surviving secret techniques and practically begs him to take it. She keeps coughing. He pleads with her to rest, but she grabs his hand, asking him to save the suffering so she can leave this world with 0 regrets. She hands over the book, and he quietly asks if he can call her his master. She thinks it feels weird to be called that right now, but knows she made the right choice picking him. From that day on, Chris becomes the 7th leader of the medical clan, even with only parts of the book left to pass down the secrets. He charges into the battlefield to honor his promise, eventually earning the legendary title of Battlefield Saint. Jumping back to the present, Chris whispers to his master, guessing she is resting peacefully somewhere. But he vows to keep his promise in this life too. Meanwhile, Maurice finally gets a letter from his lord. He is thrilled, laughing as he remembers how wild Marion used to get, wondering whose kid. He opens it eagerly. "Trust me, you and I need to see what's inside."